You're good.
Okay, ready? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag
of the United States
of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so our informal planning commission meeting, work session, psychological counseling is in effect. What we do is, I don't know if anybody hungry, is anybody want to start with the meal with people who want to eat and chat? What I do with this, maybe what I wanted to do was to get us started with generally who we are. Because we don't necessarily know each other. And then the idea is, this actually was something we were thinking about anyway, and then, Councilor Gunderson observed, you guys look like communication's a little wiggly or whatever. And so I think it'd be good, the idea was for us to meet to talk about our communication, talk about how we can streamline our communication to make our meetings more effective, faster, fairer. Just get to know each other a little better, and then talk about our visions of St. Helens, talk about some of those things, and then maybe we agreed to table this HB 3115 item till this meeting, so we can discuss that if we have a little bit of time. Over. So with that being said, why don't we start with you, Jennifer? Just a brief introduction of who you are and what you bring to the planning commission and why you're here. How's that sound?
Sounds good. So I've lived in Columbia County since 1994 and moved here from Hubbard. If anybody knows that small town. And
That's great.
I'm a real estate broker by trade. I did the restoration on the 50 Plaza Square building that used to be the computer store, now real estate office that is adjacent to the plaza. Passionate about historic preservation and saving our historic assets, and also sit on the board of directors of the Historical Society. So that's why you see my enthusiasm always for preservation.
Why did you get on the planning commission? Why are you still on it?
I was asked to be on it, and I thought it would be interesting. I'm a stakeholder here, so I want to have a say. So I was very involved in attending meetings beforehand, so I thought I might as well sit on this board too. I've enjoyed it. It's important.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, Russ. Just your background and some about you and why you're on the commission.
The background, started my company Hubbard Construction, 1980. Restorations, quite a few historical restorations, remodeling and developing in Portland and the surrounding area. Been given awards by the city of Portland for development work. And now I think we've been here in town 14 years. My son's been here 30 years in Yankton area. So I wanted to be out here to be with family. We're right now developing the property across from Red Apple. So as a stakeholder, we're really pro development and going to not build and sell or building and holding the state and putting in a retail space. My vision of the planning commission was been on it for 8 years now. Hoping we would be more involved with what the city was doing. I think we're getting closer. A lot of pushback. Having developing my own property, I like to look at the cost of things. And can see the city wasting a lot of money. Bad decisions. I think the planning commission can ask some questions. And we have our liaison, which they can go, he can go back to council and bring up some of the questions if we don't speak directly to council. We're just not trying to be picky, but I think with people we've got, there's pretty good foresight on projects that are happening, so. Pretty much it.
Thanks, Russ. And Russ Lowe. So just something about your background and then why you're here.
So for background, I spent, just retired from 37 years in large scale commercial construction. Big projects like Oregon Convention Center and whatnot. My family and I moved out here to the St. Helens area in 2001, I believe it was. And we didn't move into town proper. We were just outside of the city limits. We moved into town proper about 3.5 years ago. But even from the day we first moved out here, I walked through the old town area here and it looked dead, right? And you could see that there was some great bones for something special to happen down there, and things are starting to pop a little bit now. And I decided I wanted to be involved with the planning commission in order to help see the city's vision and influence the city's vision for what that can become. And I kind of think of it as a mini Astoria when it's finished. Someplace closer than Astoria where people might want to come to enjoy a day and do the same types of things they would do in Astoria right on the waterfront.
And what was your role at the construction company?
I was what you call a general superintendent. I was responsible for anywhere from 500 to 800 people in the field. Any field execution for the company, I was responsible for all of our projects.
And then Jennifer, I didn't ask you to follow. You own your business here in town, and active real estate practice.
Absolutely, almost 30 years. So
Okay. And then Charlie Kasner, if you could just introduce yourself
Sure.
while you're here.
Charlie Kastner, been in St. Helens now for just a little bit over 7 years. Moved out here from South Carolina. I worked for Daimler Truck North America, built Freightliner trucks, Western Star trucks. I started off in their East Coast headquarters in Fort Mill, South Carolina. And then I'm in the legal department. I handle all of the for North America, for US and Canada, any labor and employment law issues that we deal with. We got 27,000 employees. So I handle that. We were lucky enough when we moved out here, we looked in Portland and 360 degrees around Portland. And, you know, we're fooled by the Zillow and Redfin photos that some of those people deserve. I'm not sure what the awards would be. It's not an Academy Award, but for their picture taking capabilities, they look fantastic. And we had seen this house in St. Helens that looked fantastic, and we were just kind of scared to make the drive up because every time we've done one based on pictures, we were so disappointed. But we finally did and fell in love, and we're lucky enough to get one of the houses here in the Old Town area, up on the First Street bluff. Some people know it as the George House, some people know it as the Jensen House, and some people know it as the Canoe House.
So I know.
known as Honesty Hill. Historically, it's known as Honesty.
So my wife and I, we feel like we're not necessarily the owners of the house, but the caretakers of the house. Cause it's been here for a long time and it's gonna be here a long time after we're gone. So I don't have the background in historical preservation that Jennifer does, but my passion has started in that area. I lived in Charleston, South Carolina, when I was in private practice for 16 years. And historic preservation, of course, is a huge thing down there with their Board of Architectural Review and everything that they have related to historic properties. And so I want to get on the planning, I've been involved, whatever community I've lived in, one way or the other on some, whether it be a 501c3 board or some other type thing, that be involved in the community, and saw this as being a way to get involved. And kind of like you, I see the potential of this town and what it has to offer, and like to be part of that and helping to steer that.
Mark?
See, I'm a transplant from 1995. My wife brought me out here. She was living out here. She's an RN, now a Good Sam. First, like, didn't think why. I mean, I was always in Portland, everything I did, and I got used to living out here. Now the last thing I want to do is drive and see that shit show. He raised 2 kids here, 23 and 19, and I've always been involved in mostly sports activities and things like that. I like to stay busy, and I like to be part of the community as well. And so I thought I also like government and politics, and I wanted to see how this all worked, and I ran for council and got it. Then unfortunately, you guys got all signed me, and I had no say in it. But I don't like, this is not my thing. This is not how, like, I'm just trying to figure out, just like everybody else is, it's the first time, so it's nothing, there was nothing, when I brought up the communication problems, it was probably premature, because last night when I saw, well, no.
That was a bumpy meeting, and I think you made a good observation, and it triggered some work on our part, so that's good.
But, and like last night, when the gentleman that wanted to build up here with the car wash used to be just the way that you guys were working with him and saying, the hard no on the. And I think that guy's, he'll reword that in a way. And I think that's the way the planning committee should work, right? We'll give and take, and because that property's been empty for 20 years, and you're right, it doesn't matter what you put there, initially, it's gonna be like this shock, right? You come around the corner, bam, there it is, it's a huge building.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciated that last night, so. I'm not all full of criticism. That's never meant to, and it was never meant to be a come in here and say, I know how to do it, you guys are doing it wrong. That's completely, that was not even my intention whatsoever.
I don't think we took it that way.
I'm also a little bit sensitive, so bear with
No
me.
way.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, well,
So that was when you get the mental health field. So.
Okay.
That's it.
All right, thank you. And so I'm Steve Toskey, and we lived here now for about 3.5 years full time, and I met Robin 30+ years ago when St. Helens native. She came down to California, where I grew up, and in the Bay Area. And one of the things I said to Robin when we were married a long time ago is, we're always going to come back. We're always going to see your family. We're always going to come back to Oregon. We're stay in touch, and that's what we did. We came here year in, year out for many weeks, visiting her family, my nieces, nephews, in this wonderful community, and slowly transitioned up here, invested in the town, and came up here. I have a litigation practice, and Robin works in it with me. We do trial work, and we manage litigation and devise litigation strategy for corporations, and we defend individuals. And that's kind of my background. But then we spent a couple summers here and said, why don't we move here? Got a house here, and then the COVID was the final push. We were already here a lot before then. And then I was asked to serve on the planning commission by a number of people. And the reason why I said yes is that I see the great potential that the city has all over the place. I love the people of the city. It's a very unique and beautiful place where we live. And I thought that the city could benefit from me being part of a team effort to help the city in some very challenging times ahead. That's me and that's my background. So that's good. Is there anything anybody just wants to add? I mean, maybe we should, I know we're not supposed to put on our planners. Jacob and Jenny, you guys want to chime in a little bit? Jacob's checking his email. He hasn't even been listening, which is good.
I'm listening,
Oh, okay.
just working on reports. I grew up in this county, from North County. Preschool to high school, class 9 school district, so. Want to criticize my intelligence, you criticize the school district for that. So this is my 5th jurisdiction. I've been a professional planner for almost 22 years. I went to school in Southern Oregon. I was a park ranger at Crater Lake, and so that kind of drew me to Southern Oregon. When I started in Klamath County, City of Klamath Falls, City of Cornelius, Columbia County, and then I've been here for since 2007. I still live in North County by Classic 9, and it's interesting. My first job with Klamath County, I remember thinking, because this is home, right? This region, and I remember thinking, where can I get a job up in that area? And I remember, not being that knowledgeable since I was, a greenhorn planner. But I remember thinking, St. Helens is the county seat. I bet there's a potential opportunity there. And then 5-6 years later, it happened. So now you get to put up with me.
You're doing a good job.
Yeah.
You are, and you get a lot of heat. I've dealt with Jacob. I've had a few projects in town before I ever became a planner, and ran into Jacob in his role. As the chief planner here, and always thought he's very responsive, informative, fair, even though sometimes I didn't like what you had to say. Still, I always thought the city departments in general were great as far as customer service and being direct with people, even if you disagreed. So anyway.
And in a small jurisdiction, I work for all small jurisdictions, and if you're not fair and honorable, you don't survive. Get chewed up, spat out, so.
And the same thing with Jenny, by the way, segueing in with Jenny. I also had some interactions with Jenny before coming on the planning commission. I'd say the same thing for her. My interactions with her are always fair and direct and honest. So Jenny, if you don't mind, would you just give us a little bit of your background?
Yeah, so like a lot of staff, I think in rural Oregon, they got started with the RARE program. You might have heard of the AmeriCorps program. It's based out of U of O, and they place grad or undergrad. So I had a 4-year degree. That's kind of the requirement in planning. And they place you with communities that have capacity needs. So it was 10 years ago. The city of St. Helens, John Walsh, applied for a RARE assistant to come and work on the Parks and Trails master plan. So the city had a master plan from '99, and I came in 2012 to update that master plan. So that program funds me through a stipend. So the city contributed a stipend. So I basically worked very, very cheaply for 1 year on this one program. And my background is in planning. I've always loved rural small towns. I'm not from Oregon, but over the past 10 years of working here, I've grown to love St. Helens and see the opportunity, as you all do, that the downtown provides, the waterfront provides. But a lot of the vision that I have for St. Helens is implementing the vision that John Walsh sees and all past councils have seen. So I feel like my job is really just to make your vision possible. And I've always felt like that's my job. As I've worked through the years here, starting with the Parks and Trails Master Plan, I found out that I'm a really good grant writer. I've always known that I'm a good technical writer, but my success rate in writing grants and getting the city money, I think, is what made me a valuable person working here, and has continued to. And as it turns out, I think I prefer that line of work anyway, is just managing the projects, managing grants, managing the projects. And so I think, you know, over time, that will be my focus in my career. Planning is my background. I love it. But Jacob is truly the technical expert when it comes to really highly detailed applications. So I think the two of us kind of have our good strengths and offer different strengths to the planning department. And yeah, I've just been incredibly grateful to work here, and I'm always humbled by this community. So
I do want to add a little bit. So, you know, I remember that being on the interview with John and Jenny talking about liking small towns. And so we're like, oh, okay, well, this person sounds good. And, you know, she was here for a year and did a really fabulous job as a greenhorn on that plan. It got a lot of kudos. And, you know, when I started, Skip Baker was here. And so for 3.5 years or so, there was 2 planners. And then Skip retired, we had the recession, and so we bled staff. And that worked for a while, but, you know, the economy started improving and I was like, oh my God. So John saw me drowning, yeah, good word. And like, oh, that's Jenny, she's pretty smart, maybe she wants to get a job here. And so thank you, Jesus, you know.
yeah. Well, and Crystal too. Crystal was serving as the planning secretary, and she was, you know, blossoming as a communications role. And she was doing our business licensing and assisting parks reservation. I mean, Crystal just had this hat of like many roles. And so I was like, I'll take all your planning stuff for you. Like I was just a sponge when I got hired. I was like, I'll take on anything, like anything you want to give me, I will do. And so I think that's why I learned really quickly about all the different departments, and, you know, I became kind of a jack of all trades in that way. And, you know, slowly started to take some things from your plate. But it takes time.
Thanks, Jenny. When the businesses that I'm in, the money inside of the business always is the favored side of the business. So stick with the grant writing and you'll always have you'll be very valued. So here's our team. We're missing Dan Carey, who has been with the Planning Commission for a very long time, and I'll just say a few words about Dan. I think he's on vacation. He's got this tremendous knowledge because he works for the water board, and he has this great knowledge as far as water regulations and government procedures, and he did a great job chairing our commission last year. He's expressed, that he doesn't want to go in the affirmative direction, but nevertheless has participated and been a team player in that. And I think Dan's got a lot of depth that he brings to our team. And then Jenny Carlson, who's not here yet, maybe she'll come tonight, but I know that she was a city council person for how many terms? Was it 2, 1, 2 terms? And then she was the commission liaison
The entire time.
the entire time. Yeah. So she has a lot of depth of experience. So I feel like we've got the dream team going right now as far as the planning commission. And that includes Councilor Gunderson. I think it's good in a way that you're new. And you've got new eyes to look at the situation. And the learning curve, hang in there. It's gonna take time. But you're bringing fresh eyes and a fresh perspective to the government. And you're seeing kind of a fresh planning commission too, and a fresh direction with the planning commission. And it sounds to me like we're all thinking about the same thing, and we all want a lot of things, at least generally speaking, for the city, and we can go into more specifics on that. But the purpose of this meeting is just to talk a little more about who we are, our communication, how to communicate better. Just kind of get to know each other a little better, so that our meetings, we just, better communication. Yeah, after we do this for another few meetings, I think we're gonna get better and better at it. So, so let's see, the next thing, I mean, we can get, anytime we can eat, we can get stuff there, so maybe we take after this next thing, so. I think one of the things I have on my list that I tried to print, but I ran out of ink. Was like, what are some of the things that you really love about St. Helens? And like, what are the things you would preserve if you could? Just kind of some of the things, you know, you don't have to list a whole bunch, because I mean, there's plenty, we could probably go on and on forever, but. I think some of the things we can just kind of briefly go and say that about the city. And what we love about the city and what we'd like to see stay with the city. So you first, since you're here.
Again, huh?
I don't know, I can start with Russ. Go ahead, Russ, you get to go first.
What do I love about the city? It's not Portland. So, love the river. I'm fortunate enough to found a house 14 years ago with a view of the river, so that was lucky. So that is always just a really nice, it's just a nice place to live. I like the small town aspect. Like the individuality of the shops and that sort of thing. We just need more involvement of people to you know, get them going. I don't know, it's hard to, you know, there's an old mill town, and mill towns, when they die, they just, I've seen several of them that lived in some of them. They are hard to come back because there's the big money is left town that paid all the taxes, utilities and that sort of thing. So, but I see this as a start where the city can build slowly. I don't think it's a fast paced thing. I've been involved with the Pearl District in Portland, and they're still building that. That's been 35, 40 years ago. So it's just, you know, solid growth, solid decisions by the city. And, you know, I think that's exciting to be in that sort of thing. It's growing.
Thank you. And then should we go to everyone? Charlie, you go next.
All right. I guess the easiest thing to point out is kind of like the river and the natural resources that we have available to us that not a lot of communities, or not that very many, have. And just the beauty of it, and you know, the closeness of it on that part of it. So that's one of the big things. I like the fact that it's a mixture of, you don't have necessarily the have, or the distinction between the haves, have nots that you do in Portland or Beaverton or Hillsborough, things like that. It's a little bit more mixed around. I like that. The ability, I like being able to, you know, I'm lucky enough to live to where I can walk down to the movie theater, whether I'm going to a movie, or whether I'm just going down to pick up some popcorn and take back to my house and watch Netflix. I'm close enough to walk to restaurants, you know, that, you know, we now have a few down here with some more, you know, coming in, type of thing. I guess the one thing, and kind of goes back to your initial question for our introductions, you know, why I've won the planning commission is, you know, the way I see it, I know there's a lot of resistance to some things within the city. But my thought, and when I've talked to people about it, is that, you know, if we don't plan for it, the growth is going to come. And if we don't participate in how we're going to grow, it will kind of overcome us. And I would rather be part and have us be part of the planning of how we're going to grow, rather than Portland just push out to us and overtake it that way.
Okay. So then I'll go, and then Russ, Mark, and then you get to go last.
Perfect.
So we have some things in common, and that is the natural environment is one of my favorite things about the city, the river, the wildlife. I love to fish, I love to be out on the river. Things that, you know, bald eagles are amazing. I tell my friends, hey, I saw a bald eagle today, they think that's the greatest thing. We have so much wildlife, ospreys, we have a lot of parkland that is so precious here. It supports deer, which some people say we hate the deer and don't love the deer, but I do. And I like a town that's so quiet, the deer kind of walk slowly across the street. And visit people's yards for better or for worse. Love the people here. I think that there's just some essential quality of the people here. And I'd like to see the small town preserved while we grow. And I've been in a town that grew pretty large, way larger than we'll ever be, and it maintained its small town feel. So I don't think we're gonna lose that here.
Biggest challenge, I think.
Yeah, I think people fear it, but as long as people keep getting out there, keep saying hello to their neighbors, keep slowing down, keep your foot off the accelerator, go slow through town, relax, take the time to say hello to people on the street. And, that's kind of what this place is all about. I know a lot of my neighbors here, but I know my neighbors in California, just because I stop and talk to them all the time. And that's just the different atmosphere here. And I don't think we're going to lose that. I think that, but it is going to take people to reach out to each other, make sure we communicate, are friendly, stay a friendly place to live. So that's kind of it for me. Russ?
So the waterfront's what drew me down here to begin with, even when we lived up in Yankton, to be that close to the river, and now we live across the street from it. The small town feel, the people are nicer here. I lived in Hillsborough area for most of my life, and it's not Portland, but it's definitely a lot more hurried, and you don't know people as well as what you might hear. Everywhere I go here, I run into somebody I know, and I like that. Town, for the most part, is staying true to its roots as logging and shipbuilding town. I like that feel about it. I want to make sure that we keep that feel as things are developed here.
All right, Mark.
Well, I'm not to harp on the river thing, but I like to fish too, and
Yeah.
what do you have to tell you? Usually I'm complaining about them, but with the sturgeon population, they've done a pretty good job of shutting things out. I was finding fine, but the other thing that is, I always loved old buildings. Like the downtown, the old theater, just that whole stretch, right, where you just turn around the corner and I just like that. I don't really even care what the shops are that are in them. I'll go in them just because I like old buildings. I do. Wish I lived in an old house, but I don't. So that's kind of it. And the community too is like I said, I coached for 10 years, both boys and girls sports, and the people were great. Everybody was, even umpired for a season in softball, and I don't get razzed too bad.
Oh.
So that was a Rainier. But yeah, it's mostly, I think it's about the people, and it's about, I think I agree with everything you guys are saying here, kind of preserving that small town feel. When I first moved out here, 30 years, well, I'll just say 30 years ago, I thought this was going to be Highway 30. I thought it was going to be the next place that was just going to blow up, and fortunately it hasn't. It's gotten more populated, but it's not like I would have expected it to be 20, 30 years ago. Prices were cheaper. They're not really that much cheaper anymore than Portland or Hillsborough, just because so many people moved out here, and I was worried about the traffic, but it doesn't seem to really have changed all that much, really. I think it's a little hidden gem, really, to be honest with you.
Still is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we are not that far out from Portland. I mean, I used to drive that from Wilson, from St. Helens by Safeway to Wilsonville and then to Wallaton, and it was, for the most part, a grid-free commute. Like I didn't have any problems whatsoever, just straight down 30 onto 405 onto 5 and straight down. So, like I said, I was kind of surprised when it didn't blow up like I thought it was going to. That's a good thing.
Thank you. Let's see, Jennifer.
Same theme, small town. I have little bit of different perspective because I work on the plaza, so my office is directly across here, and we kind of joke that it's almost like an aquarium, that we're looking into the aquarium through our big windows, and we can see what's happening in the plaza, and time again, we see people that have stars in their eyes, that are looking at the sites from the old courthouse to the locations for Halloween Town and Twilight, and my colleagues joke that I run out to the plaza and ask, are you local and why are you here? And there's been in fact several groups of women about my age, and I've stopped to talk to them, and they're like, yeah, we get together in a different small town once a month, and we chose St. Helens today. So I'd like to see our tourism expand. I mean, I think it would be ideal if somebody could come down here when the waterfront's redeveloped and say, rent a kayak right here, rent an electric bike right here, and just have a destination, because that means jobs for all of us here. And I'd like us to be really welcoming to small business, because, you know, now we have Running Dog gone, we have other merchants that are frustrated, and so like I mentioned before, incentivizing historic preservation on houses. It'd be nice if we incentivized small business to come fill our empty storefronts.
I completely agree with that.
Okay,
Which I personally congratulate you on your all's facelift and doing the job on your
Yeah,
own
that's right.
office there. It looks fantastic.
Thank you very much. We did win the DeMuro Award for the state of Oregon. for
Well, it's
small
gorgeous.
commercial.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, very proud of it. Thank you.
so I don't know if you guys want to chime in on this or not. I just want to make sure staff isn't I started with it, so.
Not Portland. I got it in the notes.
Not.
He said, what do you know about St. Helens? Not Portland.
Good enough for me.
St. Helens, it reminds me of the Jacksonville, Oregon phenomenon, and that it's kind of a time capsule, at least down here. And that's huge, because not a lot of cities have that. Not a lot of cities have this. So, you know, those are obvious assets. Being a small town person, I do appreciate that. And it still feels like a small town, even though I've seen a lot of growth over the years. And for me, the proximity to Portland and Seattle is good, because I'm a musician and live far away. It's not a lot of opportunities for that, so.
Okay. And
Just
then,
on the band you mentioned last night.
Yeah, I'm guessing from that too.
No, not just that. I
No worry.
no, I do the crazy stuff, but also tasty stuff too, so.
Okay.
I think it's something new I can add to the conversation. I mean, all the reasons you stated are true. I think the park system in St. Helens can't be underestimated, and I know you mentioned it. It supports wildlife, but it also just supports livability, and it's not even just parks, it's quality of parks too, and the oak woodland. I mean, I think there's Novel Nature Park is such a gem of the oak, you know, a true oak woodland. I think the park system is just really good for a small town. And I also think there's a lot of opportunities to connect the park system with trails that are off street. Also, the rock features in St. Helens are so cool. And unlike anything I've seen. And yeah, I think that's unique to St. Helens.
Not good for the developers.
Not good for development.
Not good for putting a fence up on your property.
no,
Road network through like continuous grid system is hard.
Yeah.
But we have undeveloped rights of way that make great trail connectors. You know, I think if Dan were here, he would talk about that. He's thought a lot about the underutilized rights of way, and he was instrumental in the trails planning that happened back in 2015 when we were working on that plan. And that's just him going out and kind of exploring, having maps available and just taking walks and being on the planning commission, and you know, bended my ear about trails while we were updating the plan. I mean, I think that is what this body You all have your own passions and you just have to kind of figure out ways to implement them that work within the confines of government.
Are all the staircases in town connected to that trail plan? I mean, is it, what do we have, like 7 or?
I marked them as assets. Yeah, I mapped them out. But yeah, certainly there could be part of it, not ADA accessible, but. And that was something Dan brought up too, actually, was those staircases.
I often feel like I live in a Hallmark movie here. It's like I walk out my office at lunchtime and walk down to Molly's Market or something and people are waving and calling me by name. And it's just like, it's well, amazing. I moved here from Hubbard, but I grew up in Southern California, so I'm not a small town girl. And I moved here because I wanted to be part of a small town. You go to the grocery store and the principal of the school says, oh, I raised 3 kids here. So Shelby was doing great, or, it's just like people go to the football game on Friday nights and it's just an incredible place to live. And I just really want to maintain that. And like I said before, I think that's one of our biggest challenges because we all love that. How do we do responsible development and a small town?
I think one thing, and when we talk about the small shops and everybody surviving in the old town and that sort of thing, that takes people living here that have to have jobs. And so industry is very important to focus on also in the area because they'll come here for the jobs and live here, be part of the community. If we don't have those jobs, it's going to be a stagnant city.
I'm excited about the redevelopment of the industrial area because it almost seems like it's geared for smaller companies, not big giant corporations to come in, which I think is great.
I've dealt with a couple corporations that were getting out of Portland, relocating somewhere, they didn't know where. One was a large German company recently, and I was excited. I had them get in touch with the head of the PUD, and they were really interested about the area, the community, and that sort of thing, but we weren't on I-5. That was a deal killer. And so, because they do a lot of shipping by truck. And so this is just, and that's one of the blessings we have. We're not on I-5. So we're not growing like normal cities along I-5. But I think we've got a really good focus on the small to medium size and not the big guys, because they don't want to be here. And then we don't have enough people in town to go to work for a big company. The sizes we have, Civic Stainless and all the companies that size are perfect for this area.
Okay, all right. Anybody else got any thoughts on economic development while we're sort of segueing there?
I think the development area in Scappoose will get some large industrial businesses in there, and I think that will benefit from that. Things are gonna happen there soon.
Yeah, there's a huge amount of acreage opened up there that's ready to go.
The infrastructure that's out there is. They put in some great infrastructure there. And it's, with OMIC being right there, and it still hasn't quite risen to what it could be. But I think it will at some point.
I'd love to see it. As we talked about before, a boutique hotel coming in here. There's no place for anybody to stay here, especially like during Halloween town. They all have to stay out of town, so they don't want to stay at the Best Western, or not a lot of Airbnbs or vacation rentals around, and it'd be really nice as part of the riverfront development if we could entice a boutique hotel coming in.
Well, we got a hold of them trying to build one.
Yeah.
So,
Did any of you all make the trip to Independence?
Yeah, I stayed in that hotel. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it was great.
it's fantastic.
I love that whole area. The empathy, everything there they did is wonderful.
I'm pretty bullish on, I've agreed with everything everybody says, and in addition to that aspect, I'm very bullish on, the work from home economy, and I think there's gonna be demand for housing down on the waterfront here of folks that have good jobs that are looking to leave wherever it is they are. And, or people here that wanna leap into the waterfront area and then sell their homes and kind of move into this area for a lot of different reasons. I see it as being more of a multi-unit thing where people might kind of have parking. I'm hoping there's parking there and people can like pull into a garage and then go to the elevator and the elevator brings them to their one level thing. And that helps folks as they're getting a little older. And so there's that market. And then I think that attractive to the younger generation, all the, you know, being by the water and all the things that are going on around here. So just as far as bringing jobs in, I think that we can, that's an opportunity to infill with townhomes and apartments, some, not all, but some, to get more people down here to just, you know, get more energy into the economy, more, you know, people looking for, you name it, whatever people buy. That's what they, when they walk out their front door. That's where they spend their money and hopefully it's
That's a good point. I mean, because I think all companies, a lot of the law firms in downtown Portland, they're not returning en masse to the offices. Our company, you know, we're past the, you know, pandemic, but we've gone to a, you know, a post-pandemic fully hybrid work model and only required to be into work. Those that have to come in at all, only required to be in there 2 days a week. So for our plant, still need to build trucks in a plant. You need to have the people there at those locations, but you know, as far as our headquarters office and everything like that, you know, we've got people that are moving out of Portland because of Portland, and then they're getting permission to be 100% remote now. So I think what you said there is something, not the only focus area, but something that we need to can actually do some concentration on. It's something to think about and look at.
yeah,
So I agree.
yeah. So
We just need to have a place where there's a lot of diverse things to do, good restaurants to go to. The people that live here aren't going out of the community to spend their money, they're spending it here.
and when the people come and the money starts flowing, then people who are in business have a way of finding, kind of sniffing out where business is and taking a shot, opening whatever it is, and then it's really going to take enough customers to get that business going. And I think that people initially will come here for all of the things that we mentioned about the place, right? All the things we love about this place, none of which is going to go away. We do we're fully remote pretty much at our office. I mean, we've got people living all over the place.
Well, Jacob may remember this, I'm not sure, but it was in the 90s, I think, that Time Magazine or a big national magazine ranked St. Helens as one of the top 10 or 20 places in the United States to live in a small town. Did you know that?
was a troublemaker teenager at the time.
Oh.
In the teen-
Sorry, I
didn't catch on.
So,
Okay, so so anything anybody else wants to bring up? I got a few more topics that I want to kind of touch on, but maybe there's something else some other folks want to talk about. Okay,
A recap of last night's variance. Did we all feel comfortable in what we did?
I would say no for me. And I would say that I think that I sent you guys something and nobody probably read it, had a chance because it was this afternoon. And this is some training materials that I received last year and went for the training that Jennifer and Jenny and I ended up attending, which I thought was really great about land use planning, planning commission procedures, and how the planning commission can do its job to do better, you know. So last night, if I were to say, and an observation is that I thought we did way better than we have in the past as far as taken on a hearing, and that was a tough hearing. Because of the elements that were involved, you know, the mixed use zone and that project. And so where I would say that, you know, these are things that I think we should discuss and maybe work on is that there's, last night we had to do two things. We had to look at a variance with three variance requests. And then we had the other aspect of that, Jake. Conditional use permit. And so, you know, what ended up happening at the end of the hearing was, you know, we kind of ended up with some of the biggest concerns being expressed by the planning commission members. And I don't know how the vote would eventually turn out, but one of the biggest concerns was the potential incongruity of the building, very large. And I was just gonna look in the context of where it is, where it sits in historical nature. And so I think we had an opportunity within the structure of the variance to have more teeth in the design of that building. Because the concerns were, okay, you know, it's tall, it's huge. Well, it's not an office building. It's not supposed to be that big if it's a residential area. It's supposed to be set back if it's a residence. So we're gonna put this residence right up front. And so there was a lot of exceptions they were looking for, but the mixed use is that funny area. And so the biggest concerns for me and expressed by others were, how's this thing gonna look when it gets finished? Are we gonna end up with an eyesore, or are we gonna end up with this beautiful building that people go, wow, I can't believe that this building was built here.
We all had the concerns
Right.
that the facade, we were worried about what it looks like. Looking at that architect's jobs in Portland and everything, they're just really. Either stark architecture.
Unimaginative.
Yeah.
Architecture.
So they're,
You can see the same thing. 10 blocks in a row, and then something different, and then the same thing, that exact same building.
I think it's about like what makes you feel like, not just what it looks like. Like, okay, so you have this commercial building plopped in the middle of essentially residential neighborhood. So what do the residents do with it? So if it was aesthetically pleasing, it was set back a little, like I alluded to, there's a coffee house and the person that lives next door can come and get a pastry and a coffee and sit outside on chairs and enjoy the sunshine. It's like, is it really an asset to the neighborhood? And if it's not, then they need to work harder to make it an asset instead of an adversary to the neighborhood.
Mhm.
So that's what was driving me. Like, what are the citizens gonna want if they lived right there? And for me personally, with what is approved, I mean, we've spent a lot of time talking about House Bill 3115 and the concerns of values. And as a real estate broker, in my opinion, the gentleman that gave testimony last night, his property values and the other adjacent property owners, their value will be affected. And their quiet enjoyment will be affected by the building that was presented to us last night.
Okay, all right, and I think Russ had expressed similar concerns. I had similar concerns. And so we ended up with a decision that really all we knocked off. So we ended up with a decision, we knocked off 4 feet. We have no hooks in the design other than on the mixed use, whatever that, you know, so the way I look at kind of how, so let's talk about how that communication went down. What our Rogers rules of procedures were and how it is that we can slow our meetings down to make sure that when we're making decisions, we make sure that everybody's heard and we're making the right decisions. Every decision we make is an opportunity. And so when you look at our powers and our duties, they're tremendous. We've got 18 paragraphs. I mean, we can, we don't like something, we can talk about it. I mean, that's what the citizens are looking for us to do that. That's what our job is. And so with the variance exception on that A, that 17.108. Whatever A. Where. The biggest concern was, is this building gonna fit into the neighborhood? And the way they proposed it. There was no really way to know that, right? I mean, they had an idea. It was
Because it was so
close.
early on with the drawings.
So early on in the drawing. So what we could have said is. We're gonna approve these variance conditions, but we're not gonna approve this last one. Till we see your finalized drawings and we see your artist renderings. You're gonna have to bring them back to us and we're gonna take a look at them and make sure this is. Really a good building. Because. What, or we're not gonna give you a variance. And then, now they could appeal that to the council. But then the council sees the same things that we do, I would think, right? They're gonna look at the same thing we're saying, whoa, 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 this is a building that we really wanna make sure. Go back to the planning commission, or they're gonna take it on, they're gonna make their own decision, but. I think they would see the same things we did. And so we had an opportunity then, in my book. To have a very strong chain attached to that developer and say, look, you're developing a very significant piece of property here. We want to see, we're willing to give you the flexibility you want to make money. You said you needed all this stuff, you needed the setbacks, you needed the height, you needed it all, we're willing to give you some stuff, but what we want from you is we want to know when this thing's done. The finish line, every single person's gonna be calling us up and saying, this is great. Kind of like Jennifer's building, right? This is great. And so when we got past the variance and we approved the variance was just simply a height loss. And then we went on to the other conditions and, I trust Jacob and I trust Jenny. But at the same time, now we're in a review environment. Where we don't have quite as much, influence over the final outcome, I don't think. And that's my feeling on that. So maybe we could discuss that. I'm interested in hearing Jenny and Jacob's perspective on this too. Just because they were there and they saw I went down it. And so what's kind of thing that keyed me off is when we approved the variance. And then I kept going back to the factors on the variance. And then Jacob said, you already, and Jenny said, you guys already voted on the variance. You can't go backwards. And we're now moving on to the other terms and conditions that are applicable, which don't have nearly the teeth that the variance does. And so, Jacob corrected me, which was the correct thing to do, and I moved on to the other standards and we started discussing them. And then we ended up with this more, I would say, hopefully, this design review or whatever. I'm not sure that with the teeth are in it to the extent that we would like. That's my uncomfortable point of the meeting. And that's how I think maybe we could have communicated a little differently at the end. But maybe it wouldn't have mattered. Maybe it was somebody we got to the decision point and people would have said, no, I don't care. We'll do it, design review. I want to give them the variance. I don't want this coming back to us. I mean, is that the will of the planning commission? I don't know. But I don't think we ever got to that discussion. So what do you guys think about that analysis? You asked me for analysis, Russ. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I just think of, we did it last night, asked for, are you asking for a design review? And we don't have standards, so we can't really have a design review. And then you've got a builder that, he's trying to work the building to economically build it best he can, so. He's got his own parameters. And for us, we're all giving our personal, ideas of what the siding should be and everything like that. How do we do that, Jacob? I mean, do we need a design review standards before we even enter into something like that?
Yeah, so last night I brought up. In all these complexities, you have your local law, you have case law, and then there's, the statutes. And in the last several years, the state of Oregon has really ratcheted up clear and objective standards for residential development. And I mean, luckily we have we've been working with Dan for a long time. I think he'll follow through on the planning commission's recommendations. But let's say it was appealed, let's say it was someone else, someone from out of town. And they're like, hey, wait a minute, that's horse pucky. And then they lawyer up and go to the council. If it's a knowledgeable land use attorney, they're gonna point to those clear and objective statutes, and go, hey, this is subjective as hell, you can't do this. So it's about having the right tools and the tools that'll pass legal challenge. So in the clear and objective world, you can have a clear and objective standard, and then you can have another standard, and that other standard can be or the clear and objective standard can be tough. But that may help incentivize the subjective standard, but it comes down to having the right tools.
Well, we could have tabled it and asked him to come back with a better design. Can't we in that situation do that? I mean, we're not gonna issue the variance yet because we don't feel comfortable.
Yeah, you could.
But what are we in saying, and I don't disagree that we want to do that, but what would we be basing, what's our basis for saying we want a better
So
design?
that's the thing. It's
Didn't like it.
If-
That wasn't good enough.
if you don't have the right tools, you're relying on the grace of the developer. You're like, yeah, you know what? I care about this. I'll play ball. But if you get someone who is not like that, without the tools, it's gonna.
Well, I guess that's, when I'm interpreting Russ's question, what are those tools that we need to be able to have that we can then make?
For proactive item,
Our architectural standards.
Right.
the first proactive item that we haven't started working on because there's time ticking for HB 3115 that is taking up all the space in the room.
That'll be, that'll
It'll get resolved soon.
hopefully the 3115 will be done in a few
One way or
months.
the
But
other.
But the
we'll have to see.
foundation for architectural standards, Jacob prepared a pretty lengthy memo that talks about all the state's requirements for clear and object, all the different components of our code that we already have. He laid out kind of the framework that you're starting with.
And so part of that, and I was thinking about this last night, that one of the first key questions on architectural standards is, what is your geographic scope? There's been a lot of interest in the historic district, but that's outside of it, so. And
What do you mean that's outside of it?
it's outside of at least the St. Helens Downtown Historic District. The boundary.
Okay, you mean that specific property outside of it?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, that's correct, yeah.
Maybe 2 meetings ago, we talked about that a little bit, and I think that the consensus was we want standards that for the whole city. They could be some differences for the historic area, but we wanted some consistent standards for the whole city.
Some of the places in town look way different. You go across the tracks and get more, and the whole west side of town is completely different kind of architecture. I mean, it's more 60s, 70s, 80s stuff, different, yeah, it is a lot newer. And so I think trying to, telling those folks, we want you to look like Old Town, I think that's something we're gonna need to talk about.
But you don't have to, you can have different,
We have an overlay of some kind
you
of.
can have different areas that are set up, and have, again, going back to Charleston, I mean, they didn't have the strict, Board of Architectural Review standards for the whole city of Charleston. They had designated areas that had to fall in that. There were still standards for some of the other areas, but they were different than the kind of the historical standard.
So a tiered approach.
Yeah.
It seems like what would work best here.
A good example, when I first got here, in the Riverfront District. The standard was, a few people to get together and decide whether or not it jives with the area. It was worded slightly different, but it was very vague. And I'm like, what the hell is this? This isn't a very valuable tool, and so it was very concerning. And that's when we developed the standards for the Riverfront District, which have been which have worked well, but that's very specific to this area.
Right.
And this area is, it doesn't have single family dwellings or duplexes. You have to be a little more sensitive to those uses.
It's been interesting through the course of the 30 years of being a realtor out here, because when I first started out here and the mill was still open, it was very unfortunate for the mill to close, but the locals would say that's the smell of money on that side of town, and it was hard to get people to buy houses on that side of town. Now I rarely get somebody that comes in and doesn't want to be on this side of the highway, and that contributed to getting them, well, it's not new anymore, but Lewis and Clark, and before everybody wanted their children to go to McBride, and it just was kind of it was a little bit of the haves and have-nots when new people coming to town, because they all seem to want to be on the other side of town, and there's been a giant shift over the course of since the mill closed that. I think there's a shift anyway of people more interested in preservation and living in old houses, and it's probably influenced by television and other things, but.
You can do $1 million remodel in a half hour.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that, Russ. I'm like,
That's what my wife thinks.
So, just as far as, go ahead, Jenny.
Shift too, I've noticed since I've been here and Jacob has seen it, is, our council, you've heard the good old boys club of council, and, there's certain developers that maybe got away with things that other developers couldn't get away with, and I think we're coming from a place that's changing, right? That's not an appropriate way to do business anymore. Everyone's treated the same, and there's a higher level of expectation about product you deliver. But when I first started, we were coming from a recession, and it was all about business friendly. We got to have a business friendly environment. Where can we reduce costs for development so that we can get development, because we have all these vacant properties. We need it. We want to attract development to this community. And maybe that isn't there anymore. But when I hear architectural standards for the full city, I think, oh man, you're gonna push away all this development. You're gonna say bye-bye to all these developers. They're not gonna want to come here because we're too difficult to work with. Maybe that's okay. Like, maybe that's what the tides are changing. Because you've all talked about, growth, but preservation in a small town. Like, maybe there is a mix, but this is architectural standards are something the council is absolutely going to weigh in on, because it does impact the type of developer who comes here. And I just, it's interesting to see the change over time about that business friendly piece. And whoa, now we're too business friendly. Now we're just getting garbage built. Like, there's this balance of like, how do you attract the development, not push them away?
And we've got primarily one developer coming in and buying all the infill lots and putting up townhomes that don't fit into the historic character of all these 50-plus-year-old homes on the side of the.
Why aren't other people buying the infill lots?
By the time you have the shovel in the ground, probably you're it's so expensive. I don't know. He's just,
He's able to get it done.
so for me, when you build the same thing over and over and over again, it gets less expensive, because he knows exactly what it costs are gonna be, and so.
For their purpose, yeah, he's
So it's like,
got a target in mind and he's able to get it done, as Kosky said, but why aren't other people buying those lots? Like, that's the question. Is it?
The expense,
Yeah,
system development charges, the permit fees. It's
now it'd be the design process, slowing the time is.
well, I don't know. I think you can attract a lot of small developers with something that says you can't just do a Hatfield home, you're gonna have to do a little something. I've seen some duplexes around that I think Wygan has done a few.
nice ones, yeah.
And they're sort of a balcony out the front. Well, just it's the same
Down
box.
the windows.
It's the same box, but he just put a little balcony upstairs out there, and it's like, wow, that's not bad. So, Dan has winter one and a winter two, and he just keeps printing them over and over, and that's what he's done for so many years. But
they're putting a nice balcony on the back of the house up there on First Street that overlooks,
that's where the
that
view.
overlooks the duplexes that they're building. Like,
Understand why he didn't just put that living space forward. I didn't get that.
Well, see, there you go. These guys have cookie cutter designs and then they just, you don't want to change the design because
That's money.
then it's cost money and re-engineering and everything.
Huh?
We have his contact, you wanna call him and ask him?
I think the more important thing is not to worry about the past so much as I think he heard us. And I looked him right in the eye. I mean, we do have this design thing. And so I do think getting in front of that is gonna be important. Like you said, get a hold of the architect. I mean, I'm a little concerned about some of us following up with the architects because we're on the planning commission, but if you want somebody to take points, say, hey, look, I just want you to say, this building came up again in the planning commission pizza meeting. And we really mean that we're gonna wanna see something that's gonna fit in. And so now's the time to start thinking about that. So when you bring something forward, these are gonna be expectations, maybe bam, 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 give them some bullet points. I mean, we only got one chance until that thing is really built, and then the phones are gonna ring and it's either gonna be awesome or it's gonna be the other side. And let's just go for awesome. We still got the shot. I mean, we gave the guy everything he wanted pretty much. So now we want to have something back, and we kept a string on him. You've got the.
In the back of my mind, I was thinking too about the fact that we haven't done whatever the inventory is called, the commercial.
The economic
Assets we have,
analysis?
what we need, and. I mean, it's not gonna help if you build this residence with commercial on the ground floor, nobody needs it or wants to put anything in it. So.
They'll come back and ask the residences.
To a certain commercial code, I mean, it would be cheaper to build it as residences.
Oh, would it?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's why I said, why don't we just make an apartment?
I
But
really think so, because
Sorry.
he doesn't have to do the tenant improvements on the commercial side, he's giving you studs and the tenant's doing the improvements,
Well, that's not,
right? It's not right?
not necessarily. It depends how the lease
Yeah.
is written.
I was just thinking the fire separation between commercial and residential, but I don't know enough about it.
Fire separation is huge, because you're adding the commercial and the residential. But he's doing enough of it. He realizes that it takes a while to absorb into the marketplace, a commercial space. And sometimes the residential too, so it can be a 1-2 year project with that filling in, but it is building the city and that it's allowable there. And I think a mixed is always nice. It breaks up that. If that's just a straight box with apartments in it, then you've got a whole other different element there versus some commercial, which adds a nice element to it. I wish it'd been pushed back a little bit.
Do you think that the whole live work concept is gone after the pandemic? Or is it, or do you think that's still viable to build a live work type of scenario?
I didn't do it on the project I'm doing now because I didn't see that there's so much empty commercial in this town. I thought it'd be maybe 15 years before it really gets, filled up. So I had to think about the project as cash flow and those apartments with rent where I'd be sitting on the commercial spaces. I built live work in the city of Portland and they were very big and very expensive, but people saw them as they could live and work right there. And they ran companies out of these places and they were separated enough where I don't know. Like Steve, a lot of people are just working on their computers now.
Mhm.
So I wondered if it was.
You don't need an office space, and so I don't know.
It was
I got a
second,
lot of office space to rent if you want some down in Pleasant, and I got a couple thousand square feet looking for some town, frankly, got like 4 people in 5,000 square feet, so.
I kept thinking, and I get confused on where Aloha, Beaverton, all that Hillsborough mixes together.
All the same thing.
That old Costco.
It used to be, it is now, and that's part of
Costco that
what,
was there off of Jenkins. And they built the work right down the street from there and they crammed them right up to their sidewalk. And that was what I was seeing in my mind was it's weird because it's an apartment building and you'll see like a little State Farm sign or, whatever the work thing is, but they're crammed right at the line of the sidewalk almost, their setback has to be 0. And I didn't want to see that type of feeling over there.
Well, I think, my suggestion is the horses are out of the barn. But there's still an opportunity to make suggestions, and it is what it is. But I do think giving Jacob some ideas and interfacing with the developer regarding the historic components that we think will help blend this building. He says he's gonna go for a flat roof. Well, there's a lot of historic buildings around here that have a flat roof. They just have that little parapet, whatever around, and you could make a flat roof building look kind of older and more traditional.
Fine.
Yeah,
I have a flat roof.
exactly. So
I was-
there are opportunities there still that we can make this thing work.
Well, and I was actually thrilled that he wasn't gonna build what he originally got approved for.
Yeah,
I thought that was a giant
Because that
mistake.
was-
Purely because of the relationship he had with the mayor.
Yeah, and so I was thrilled that he pulled back on that and that he's doing something different, because it is the gateway to the city from the north, and when you have, like I said, when you have backyards and then there's the back fence, then there's a no man's land to the improved street, and it always looks terrible, and I thought, wow, that was a huge mistake. So I'm happy that it's something different.
Relationships matter.
Yeah.
Like I was telling Mark, Dan's someone who comes in and then I can, hey,
Yeah.
call him names, but just,
Yeah.
jovially, we just have that relationship. And so having that rapport. And then Rick reaching out to him, we had a meeting in here and Rick was hearing a lot of concerns about what they were proposing, probably from the planning commission. It's just gonna be 6 units. Sat down and talked with them and, Dan, I'd like to see something different. He's, well, you know what, I'll try that. And that's what we saw.
I also told him that it was in the urban renewal agency. And that the return for the city would be pretty substantial on this development. From going from bare land to something with commercial in it. The assessed value will be much higher, bring money to our downtown. Not that that should have been a consideration in your approval or denial. But personally, I'm glad it's moving forward.
This is why we're a good team. We remember different things.
When I drove from, down from uptown, Bolton down here, I noticed that when you come around the corner from the school and you go down by the big rock, beautiful rock structure that we have there with the sidewalk right next to it, that big rock wall, when you come around there, the church is right there. And I'm thinking this building is gonna completely block that church out from all the people that are coming down this road. It's gonna become the prominent view of the drivers. And I'm just throwing that out there as
So, I disagree.
really.
I think the church is tall enough to stand out. I think one of the things that I thought about last night was that lot's been empty for close to 20 years, right?
Mhm.
And I don't disagree with the design plans and, wanting it to fit in the neighborhood. But even if you found the perfect design, I'm gonna come around that corner for a long time and go, what the hell's this? Because it just hasn't been there. Right? So, I agree with everything that you guys said about that, making it a little more, friendly to the architecture around, right? But that's, it's subjective once again, and so it's gonna be up to you guys to make that call.
Yeah, but I guess it still feels like to me that when to do that, what we're doing is we're making a suggestion. Because we don't have the fall back on.
Well, I kind of want to come back, that kind of brings me back to the tools discussion and one of the things I mentioned when Russ had asked that. I thought this 17.108.050A. It says will not be significantly detrimental. And be significantly detrimental in its consequence to other properties. In the same zoning district or vicinity. I thought that was loose enough to where, and kind of subjective enough, right? Like everyone's gut was telling him this thing's incongruous, this thing's doesn't feel right. I'm uncomfortable with some aspects of this. And it wasn't just the whole project in general, because we both said, hey, look, this thing a big building's allowed. It's the mix of everything you want that's making people uncomfortable. And that piece significantly detrimental in its consequence, I thought was enough to where we had enough teeth right there in that sentence to say, we want to see more of a drawing of what this is gonna look like before we rule as a commission that you've satisfied this. Because the burden's on him to satisfy that. And we weren't entirely comfortable. And so what Jacob is saying though, and this is kind of what I want to drill down more on the technical aspects of things. Is that, you know, you say they're the legal, objective legal standards. And I'm not sure if we would have hung our hat on this. I think he could have appealed that portion of the decision to council, meaning if we said, we are not comfortable with the design, we want to see the final design before we're gonna approve this variance, because you have to tick every single sentence in these boxes. If you don't tick them all, the variance is denied. And so I don't think he can appeal and say you're not basing your decision on a objective standard when it's a subjective. What's significantly detrimental in its consequence to the other properties, you know. Jennifer says, I think it may drag down property values. If it's done wrong, it's gonna mess everything up. And I think that's the sentence that says, yeah, if we've come to that opinion, that gives us enough teeth. Now, they can't come to council and say, I don't agree with the planning commission. This is the only thing that the planning commission based their decision on, and then council would have to weigh in on this exact same thing, and decide whether to overrule us or not. So I guess I want to come back to the discussion of, do we have the tools right now when they're coming for a variance? If they're not coming for a variance, right? If it's a conditional use permit, that's a whole different set of standards. When you're asking for a variance,
Yeah,
you're
but
asking
what
for a
type of-
lot.
Type of variance, right? It was a setback and a height. What, so you can't base it on a character, you can't base it on your architectural standards.
Sod or
You can say, no, I don't want a height increase here.
Well, I
No,
think,
don't want a setback.
I think though that it's the combination of, and you know, I see where you're headed with that, and I can see that argument. But I'm thinking it's when you combine, so if it's a residence, it's supposed to be 35 feet. And if it's a residence, it's supposed to be 20 feet back. If it's a commercial building, it can be 45 feet and it can be up to the line. So you're asking for a big ask, because you're asking for 10 more feet or way more feet and this encroachment on like Jennifer says, you know, all these houses right up against the boulevard, which is weird, you know, so I think that we can say, because what makes us feel uncomfortable is this doesn't feel right because it's a residence. And that's so by asking to cross the line into residential,
excuse me.
and now he says, I want to cross the line in residential. And then now I want 9 units, and I don't want to go by apartment standards. I want to go by commercial standards, and I want to move it 20 feet toward the road. I think that gives us the right to say, well, you know, we want to see what this thing's gonna look like, man. This is gonna be this big thing right up against the road. And this was allows us to do it. Now, he could appeal to LUBA. But I think we could make that decision. We could make it. And then he could appeal to LUBA and LUBA could tell us no, but I don't think so, because it's a subjective standard. That's what our code says. So I'm just throwing that out there that I guess, let's continue to drill down on that and kind of explore that, because more variance requests are going to come to us. And when our guts are telling us something may not be right, you know, I don't know if there's a tradition of using the variance request to hang on to something on design, but the gut, you know, and even, you know, my wife was telling me, this thing's gonna look horrible. And she kind of had the same opinion as Jennifer. And that is, it's just not gonna look right. You know, this residence is gonna be smacked right up against the road. So,
Deny it,
huh?
deny it.
We could, you,
I don't think we always have to have a compromise. To me, it's like 5 feet or whatever was plucked from air.
That's all true,
Like, how is it gonna change the aesthetics of anything? What's the difference gonna be? It's still gonna be a very tall building.
okay.
And so,
Well, I want to get back to what Jenny's saying though, and that is, we granted the variance with exceptions. So we said lop off 4 feet or 3 feet And then you get your variance. So why couldn't we made the exceptions saying, we could have flat out denied it. We could have said, we could have denied it. You were absolutely right. And then that we would have sent this gentleman who builds projects. We have a 20-year vacant property. This guy, you know, he's a base hitter, man. You know, he gets on base, he builds stuff. He's probably gonna build this project. And so we lose our opportunity on him. And so why not give him what he wants and then we get back and put a chain on it, say, we want to see this resolved. When we see it resolved, then we're gonna give you the green light. This is all you need for the green light. Green, 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 green. This is the one left. Bring back your design if we like it. And then if he doesn't like what he brings back, then he can go to the council and say, hey, these guys are completely unreasonable. They're crazy. They asked me for all this stuff. I gave them it all and they still can't.
Or is what you're suggesting that we, looking at a variance like that, that we also bring in things that don't have anything to do with the variance, but we have concerns about that part of it, and we hold them up on the variance because we have concerns about things that don't have anything to do with the variance.
No,
That would not
Nexus issue.
go well, and that.
no, I feel like this significantly detrimental to the consequences of the properties was enough to hang our hat on the condition of the design.
On height.
The combination of the
On height.
height, residence height, and moving it forward. Those are three
So
things
what's
he
he
wanted.
coming back with? It pushed back or it lowered in height? I mean, what are you asking him to come?
Still doesn't have anything to do with the design.
Yeah, I don't understand how.
That in the end, we would have said to him, we want to see more final plans and we want to see it blending in the neighborhood to resolve our concerns that this is gonna be some kind of elephant in the room versus a bill, you know, those were concerns expressed by people in the hearing. You know, Russ expressed those, Jennifer expressed those, I expressed them. I didn't hear them coming from other commissioners. But that was a potential path we could have been on, and we could have discussed it, that's all. We're talking about a decision that's made. No regrets, what's done is done. What we're talking about is our communication, and I don't think we should use something for something it's not intended. I think that when we have bad guts, we should listen to them. Decide what laws are in effect and move forward with that.
But, okay, I would still have a problem with it, even though I might have a problem with what the design, whatever it's gonna be. I would have a problem with us using the holding back on a variance because we want to get something there.
Well, you know what, you would have then voted for the 40 feet like you did. And you got exactly what you wanted. We didn't have the discussion, but our decision making could have at least got to the point where we actually brought up this point, analyzed it, and the commission ruled one way or another, which is all we're about. We're not about winning and losing. You know, some of the votes may be, we're about the citizens winning, and we're about fair hearings and a public process. And if, we're gonna hash it out, we want to be able to communicate and deliberate clearly, then we vote. And when that vote goes down, the decision is made.
But we also want to, when we do make a decision, and this, I think you completely agree with this, we want to have it to be as defensible and to be as solid as it can be. In terms of not being able to be appealed, shot down, found to be, done incorrectly or improperly on that. And in our discussion, I feel like in our discussion, we're saying, we're gonna hold off on this. We want you to give us more in this area that really doesn't have anything to do with the variance. I think we open ourselves up for a big challenge.
Okay, so I'll go back to that point. I think this is a good one to drill down on. My opinion is that this gave us what we needed to do it. And my gut was telling me this is what we should do. And I think Jennifer would agree with me. Now, you didn't hit you like it hits me. Hits you differently. Yeah, you're thinking, and so if you were feeling more passionate about like maybe how we were feeling about the significance of the area, you might think, oh yeah, this absolutely gives us the room. I think so. I think tune into what you think the right thing is, and then I think this would have been fine. I don't know how you would have challenged that.
I think, if I may,
Yeah, go ahead.
so this is a good segue into how you can develop your code. I do think there's a nexus problem there that puts you on shaky ground in challenge. But without the variance, so 35 feet, clear and objective. You want a variance, now they're going the subjective path, which they have, you have your objective standard. But if you wanted to make those connections, you could have something in your code where, okay, you don't need a variance. But if you take this subjective path, we'll give you some breaks and some standards if you put some gingerbread in that building. So now you're incentivizing some of those issues that, oh, yes, that's great, I want that. And then you're helping to separate yourself from that potential legal challenge. So it's
Do the right thing by the law. We don't want to be able to. And so I guess. I think the bottom line on our discussion, at least for now, is, and I think we should catch Jenny up a little bit, is
Did I read the wrong time?
no,
Did I read the wrong time?
It started at 4.
Oh, my bad.
It's okay. Have some pizza if you'd like.
I was still working.
Oh, okay.
I don't know, Jacob put, but so I think the bottom line is, if we have some additional standards that we've adopted and the city's adopted. That then gives us something to say, hey, look, not only is it gonna be out of character, but it also doesn't comport with these design standards, or, or we could say you have to make them comply with these, and we don't have to worry about it. Because we know if we say yes to this, right? We know that the design is at least gonna fit into what, because that's gonna be the law. We don't have that, we don't have to use it, or. I mean, I get what you're saying there, so. So that was a good, so that was a good discussion point. I don't know, does anybody want to add anything on that?
The discussion you're having right now kind of hits home because I didn't want to approve that. The only reason, good valid reason I have is I didn't like it. And I didn't feel like that was enough last night, right? And we got some concessions, so maybe a little bit more comfortable with it, but I still didn't want to see that without some major changes to it, but I didn't feel like we had the stroke to do that, given that we don't have standards.
Well, you know what, then reasonable minds can differ, and I think it shows, we're gonna get some decision in the future. I think one of the important things is we never reached this point in our deliberations, which took us a while tonight to even get to, right? But we never got to, what happened is that the way that the motion went down, and the way it happened was, we never got to this point in the deliberations, that I never got there myself, right? And what happened was I started getting here after the variance was already granted. And then I started to use the standard, and, Jacob said, Jenny says, hey, decision's over, man. And Jacob says, yeah, you gotta go on to the other standards. Okay, shift gears, how to do that. So I think that, this is a meeting about communication. And so about listening to your gut. So the fact of the matter is, the fact you didn't want this building, you didn't like it.
It's not that I don't want the building, I want to see that area developed, and we're in the business of making sure that development happens in a responsible manner. We want it to happen. It's our job to somehow get to yes on these things, but.
Or no,
Well,
really.
no, there are times we're gonna need to say no, but it's our job to make sure that it's done responsibly. And I don't wanna see this builder not able to build there. I wanna see him do it in a manner that fits, right? And we don't have the tools to do that. Yeah.
But I mean, after I went home, I thought they didn't all have to be 2 bathrooms. There was room in that building to give on some of the setbacks and some of the space. I thought that-
For that.
Well, hang on a second.
decision, but saying no to the setbacks, saying no to the variance didn't mean they can't develop it. It just meant they can't develop it that way.
So let me just chime in on what, so the fact that. Okay, so the fact that, so you would have had to articulate. Based on the law, why it is that you would have voted against it, and the fact that. You recognize that whatever you were feeling, you had no legal basis to do it, and despite how you may have reacted. you still voted in favor of the variance, and what we did shows that you're an objective planner, that you're doing your job in the right way. And just because you're not gonna act on emotion, and just because you don't like something, you're gonna shut it down, right? And that, the point is for a fair public hearing based on evidence and law. That's what people depend on. So anyway, so one of the things that springboarded in this discussion, Ginny, is we were kind of drilling down into our discussion last night on that development, and we kind of had some other stuff, but then we're kind of drilling down on that, figuring out, okay, where did we think it went wrong? And some people were saying that well, there were a lot of things said, so it'd probably be good to go back and review this tape, because this is a meeting about communication, et cetera, but kind of like how we arrived at the decision and how we deliberated, and we kind of missed some things and missed some points. We're just kind of trying to tune things up. And then we had a very nice discussion with Jacob about, what are the standards and where we have gaps. That was kind of where that's kind of springboard. It was more like, how do we feel about that decision? And then we were discussing like, okay, where do we think our decision making could have been better? Whether we came to, it doesn't matter about the decision itself. It's just, how could we have been a better evidentiary body, deliberative body? So that when we get to the end of the process, we all feel like this was a fair hearing, this was a good hearing. I feel like, I got all my points out, everybody got their points out, and we made a decision. And now we're gonna move on, versus coming away thinking, okay, something didn't feel quite right about that. Some didn't quite right, have it quite right. What do you think, Mark? Just kind of, I see you looking at me,
I was listening.
Be so sensitive.
Leaving it.
In this situation, I felt like this was a good opportunity for the planning commission to work with the builder and get something in place where everybody's gonna be happy. And I don't think it's gonna be like a financial setback. You correct me if I'm wrong, Russ, some of the changes that you guys would feel the most comfortable with when that property's developed, whatever the elevation looks like on the outside of that, of the architectural drawings, right? So like I felt he's willing to work with us, and kind of like you were willing to work with him because you want the property developed. I think it should be a give and take. I don't think it should be one person coming in saying, boom, I'm gonna set this down and that's it. And that's the way it's gonna be.
Well, if he wasn't asking for things, he, might not even got to us. I mean, we had to approve things. I mean, when he came in, he wanted things by law.
But he did it like out of respect, I would say, for the.
If he wasn't asking for those variances, Jacob would have approved it offhand, and it would have been in the director's report that we see. We would never have seen it.
Eat some pizza before we.
Yeah, why don't we eat some pizza and then,
I'd like to. Maybe suggest that we invite Jenny to kind of. Where we started to introduce ourselves.
Yeah. No, I agree.
You wanna
So
get your pizza and you can eat and take turn?
and we can eat and listen to you, because we all took turns.
We all did it already, and I don't care.
I already,
I mean, while you're getting your pizza, I left here last night and told Brady outside, it's like, so do I call Jacob now and tell him I quit, or do I wait until tomorrow? It's based on 3 meetings, I'm like, I'm not going back. I did 2 years on the council in a toxic environment, I won't do it again. Yeah, I just won't do it. I just think that as a person on this planet, that we owe it to ourselves and to our community to be civil and to be fair and be respectful of each other. And I'm not gonna participate and witness or take part in anything less. And it's like, if things don't lift me up, I mean, I've walked away from committees and stuff I loved, I believed in, because it wasn't a supportive environment. It's like, this is a toxic situation. I'm just not gonna, I can't stop people from being themselves, but I can stop participating. Cause it's like, I just wanna see this group be constructive, cause I think everybody here has their heart in the right place. I think everybody has their mind in the right place. I just think we just have to, check your feelings at the door and realize we're all on the same purpose. I mean, Jenny and Jacob worked their little knuckles to death to try to bring us all the facts, and being respectful of them means that's how much better they can help us and how much better we can help each other. That's just, I mean, I definitely feel what it's like to be a new counselor and come in as like, well, this was an ice water challenge. Yeah, I mean, it's a tough, you know, it can be a tough road to hoe to try to, you know, catch up on the fly, especially with, you know, hearings and such. And I didn't even throw a temper tantrum about Twilight. I let it go.
I wanted that too.
I'm gonna start a letter writing
I think I
campaign.
even put it down as number 3 on my list.
I guess from this standpoint, this is just not Halloween specific, not street specific. I love historic landmarks. I love tradition. I love all that stuff, but I've watched this town for the last 25 years and I've seen stuff go by the wayside and we just keep beating those dead horses to death. And it's like, what has been successful in the 20 years I've been here? And it's been all the crap around stupid Halloween, and I hate Halloween, but it's like, I always joke, you gotta dance with who brought you. Cause it's like, you know, I didn't choose for Halloween movies to be made here, but it's like, that's why people come here, that's why people talk about it here, that's what brings revenue here. And it's like, nobody else would know that Twilight was other than weirdo groupies would even know it was a reference. You'd have to know the movie or live here to know it was a reference. That's just my nod. And if engineering said they have a pumpkin way, they obviously got something, but it's something successful we did, just like ships. But I look at ships as being the past. And, you know, what can we do this future minded? And that's why I struck on the women, prominent women, because I think honoring diversity in our community is an important message to send to our next generation. So.
So were you talking about Brady's speech when you're talking about toxic environment?
No, I was talking about how the debate went. It had nothing to do with Brady. I have a decade of ignoring Brady under my belt.
Okay, so
So, I
how
mean,
we started the meeting was, let's,
Thanks.
no, Brady has been my best friend since 2008.
How long have you been part?
And that's like, because I can accept the facts and leave the rest. Because again, just like everybody here, we don't have to be best friends, but Brady loves this community. He'd do anything for this community, whether you like his.
about that. I just agree with you. And
So,
I'll say this on the record that Brady's coming in wasting our time. We could do a lot more for the community than coming in and airing his personal vendettas and insulting people. And I'm getting phone calls by saying, you know what? You guys are people coming in being disrespectful to the planning commission. It's not good mojo. You guys should do something about it. And I can tell you, these are people who do it, and these are people from the community that aren't even friends of mine that respect what we're doing and are calling me and saying, you know, we got a big problem in this town with people feeling like they can just abuse people. And when he comes in and abuses people,
Steve Topaz came in here. I don't even know.
I don't care about Steve Topaz.
Well, I'm telling you,
Meeting.
it's free speech.
You know what? Wrong.
It is free speech.
Okay, well, good.
As long as we have public comment, people can say what they want to say.
You know what? I disagree with you 110%. So let's just go back to how this meeting started
Sorry about that.
and your role here today, which is to tell us who you are, how you came to St. Helens, and you know what, so we started with that. What was it? Who are you? And and why are you on the planning commission? That's how we started the meeting. Everybody who came around introduced themselves and
I
talked
the
about that.
benefit of having somebody to go ahead of me to know.
We kind of talked about what we do for a living.
You know, what we do for a living, and then kind of personal life, you know, what brought us here, and you know, just things like that. I mean, it's kind of, we just riffed it, so it's not.
I was hijacked by my first ex-husband.
It is.
No, I mean,
Actually,
was born and raised in East Portland County and have lived in Portland still the majority of my life. I'm not quite old enough that I've lived the majority in Portland County. But I love the walkability of Portland. I love the inclusiveness of Portland, the equity piece of Portland. And so when people bash Portland as being ghetto, I get a little defensive. I get a little defensive when people say we're not going to turn St. Helens into Portland, because Portland, homeless crisis aside, has won lots of awards and is still known as the #1 place to move to, because they are open to new ideas. So I don't think it's a bad thing. But there's ways we can do better.
what about you, though? You came here with your ex-husband, so what, how long?
My ex-husband, my ex-husband wanted to be a fireman. And so you do that through going through a rural channel. So he was a volunteer fireman. I've been for many years. And didn't work out, and I ended up volunteering for the fire department, was treasurer for a couple of years, left my husband, married another fireman. It happens, and it's like, it's what's convenient. But, ended up raising my kids out here and just decided, I got close to 50 years old and decided am I gonna just complain about this town or am I gonna do something about it? It's like just being a good example for my kids to give back. I started volunteering with Shetco, started doing for family leadership program, built splash park, help with the banners, help with emergency preparedness fairs, just have done lots of projects around the community. Just kind of encompassing a welcome, inclusive environment. And lo and behold, meet Keith Block, and planning commissioner or city councilor comes up and he's like, please turn, you have to run, you have to run. So I ran for city council. People didn't care who I was, they just knew who I was running against and I beat. So, and then I finished all that and took 2 years off, build my house, getting better health wise. And just positions come up and I'm like, well, at least planning commission, I kind of know my way around that, and always bothered me sitting over there that I couldn't be a little more.
And you can.
Yeah, I mean, my opinion didn't matter over there. Yeah, it doesn't, I mean, it matters.
It does matter.
Matters on council, but it's a different planning commission, because the planning commission that was here when I sat over there shut me down. Over and over and over and over again, shut me down and silenced me pretty hard. I was pretty intimidated by that crew. And so it's like, I kind of worked hard to get some folks that would be more open to new ideas. Jennifer was one of the people I kind of poked her with sticks and got her over here, because I think that she has a good knowledge and good skill set. And I think that she's a team player. So I just think it's a good thing. And, I had Tuesday nights.
Okay, great.
I got plenty to do.
What are the
No
things you
respect to
did?
you, disrespect to you. But Jenny, I think you're underestimating that, because I think working with other council members were the best. My short experience on the council, because you were so engaging and I felt like you always participated. And I think that was really valuable, and that kind of set the standard for me, and that's my mind kind of what I expect.
Excuse me.
I did a workshop based on some instances I have, because I don't like conflict at all. I really am conflict averse. And so it talks about working with people you can't stand. And I did a whole weekend, bought the book, did the talk, did the role play and everything, and talked about listen to people's objections to find common ground. Because sometimes you don't have to be their friend, you have to find common ground. So usually when people are negative or confrontational, it's because there's something in their cross, something in the shoe, and it's like, what is it? Is it the crosswalk that's bothering you? Is it, what's bothering you? What's at the core? And usually you can find some common ground, or at least appreciate why they're upset. It's horrible, your dog got ran over and your car got hit and somebody stole your kid's bicycle. That's absolutely horrible. How can we fix it? Kind of just listening to them, that people can be mad, be upset, and you just have to take those avenues. But just some skills that I've done to try to find those ways to communicate. And, I've worked 15 years with people that are largely considered nonverbal. And so when you have to communicate with somebody, life and death things, and they don't communicate verbally, you have to listen with other skills. But that just kind of just makes me a little bit different, and my son's on the spectrum, so, and I'm guardian to my brother that's schizoaffective, bipolar type. And so I've got a lot of experience working with people that don't fit in a round hole. On square pegs in my life. I know you were with CCMH still, and so that whole inclusive equity, everybody has a place in this community, and that's why I kind of get my feathers ruffled with words like crippled and those people and addicts and criminals and homeless. It gets my dander up serious, because I know people that are addicts. I know people that have been homeless. I know individuals in my family that have been affected by that stuff. So when you start doing the us and them, it really ruffles my feathers, and that's my issue to bear. But that's my sensitivity, and it always has been. If I'm anything, I'm for the little people, whether it's the voiceless homeless, the voiceless addicts, seniors, people with disabilities, kids. people that are left behind. That's just kind of my role, but I've always, everything I've ever seen you involved in, Jennifer, it's like, I don't even have to ask what it's about. If you're involved, it's like a stamp of approval because I respect your integrity
Appreciate that.
and your values, that it's like if you or Keller Williams involved. Well, I mean, we have prior history because of your shop and because my second ex-husband. He doesn't really count if we're still friends, right? But
Judging at all.
no, I mean,
Give me a little grin, huh?
it sounds like a lot, but it's like when you're 59, you got a history. But it's like if you would choose puberty, you would choose the past. But you know, my ex-husband had a car shop and we worked on Jennifer's and Jane's cars and everybody on that street, really, for a lot of years. But it's just, you know, that community, that sense of community that permeates and crosses over economic and social boundaries, because it's no secret, I think, to me, is when you start your own business, you live paycheck to paycheck and you have nothing for a long time and you work your ass off, you know, and you don't get any holidays and you don't get days off and no vacation and no health plan. And here we are barely making it. And Jennifer and everybody on her street are clearly making it have nice cars, have nice homes and stuff. And we're so kind to us and so welcoming to us and so respectful of us that it just says a lot about kind of individuals they are.
I think we're trying to do something here that has never been done or hasn't been done in quite some time, and that's to reinvent based on proactive committees and before. I think that for a long time, the planning commission kind of got watered down, and now we're super fortunate to have very passionate members, whereas you might have struggled before to even get applicants. And so people would go, oh, no, it's fine. It's only a couple of hours a month because that's your only commitment. And so now that we have people that see beyond that, there's gonna be growing pains. I mean, outside of here, I would consider Steve my friend. But I will tell you, I struggle sometimes with his aggressive way he communicates. And from his side of it, he doesn't mean anything by it. We walk out the door and it's like, that's done. Let's go back to, and so for us that struggle with conflict and this heavy pushing, somehow we gotta, I think your opinion is super valuable, and somehow we have to figure out how to communicate that. I mean, for me, I have to just like almost brush it off and know that it's just the way Steve communicates. But I don't think he disrespects me by the way our communication style is different. So.
I mean, I came in here, the only person I knew in this room was Jennifer. Well, and Russ kind of, but it's like, you know, getting to know each people through just a couple of hearings, getting to know, you know, different people, just their opinion and how they process is definitely very helpful.
Yeah, we kind of went through our backgrounds and stuff, so I think that was one of the things I wanted to do, and so I think it is important that you review the tape and see who it is you're on the commission with. We got a very substantial group of people here, yourself included, Dan Carey included, who's not here. And I described this as kind of the dream team, and that includes Jenny and Jacob. And you know, we have the tools that we can put together to really do a good job for the city, help the city council out. Part of the meeting was to get to know each other better, to talk about our communication. There's going to be conflict, potentially in our deliberations. You know, people are going to disagree. And the idea is we should be able to disagree on the facts and on the issues. Make decisions and then move on. Because once the decision's made, it's over. So I think that, but as I was reading a lot of Robert's Rules of Order stuff, and it said the Robert's Rules of Order are there to help decision-making and meetings to go along. Even if there's like, people have great camaraderie or intense conflict on the issues. That's why the rules of order are there. Went and bought the small Robert's Rules of Order book, one for each of you. and me. So that we could kind of review the Robert's Rules of Order. And make sure that we are, how strictly we adhere to them. I don't know if there's rules by is there any, it kind of brings me into, I don't know whether there's any formal rules of decision making by, I know that people kind of use the modified rules of order. Robert's Rules of Order, the city council uses that. We use that, but then, like Russ was saying, what in our decision making last night, how do we feel about that? And so one of the things they say is, when somebody makes a motion, then that motion is restated by the chair or seconded, but then it's restated by the chair. So we know exactly what the motion is. Then, now we deliberate. So now everybody knows that. And just because you make the motion or just because you second the motion, that doesn't mean you're voting for it. That just means that you want to go up for discussion. So and I've seen the city council actually do this a few times in my meetings where somebody will make a motion, somebody will second it. And then they'll have a deliberation and they'll all unanimously go against it. Even though the person suggested it, the other person seconded it, and they discussed it. And then when they were done with their discussions, they all decided, forget it, we don't want it. And so that's the important thing to consider about motions and seconds and procedures is trying to understand what the procedures are. And then working within the procedures will help us avoid conflict, help us keep things moving. Like, do we want to, we got limited time, right? I mean, and somebody was saying today, wow, man, I can't believe Jenny and Jacob. I mean, they work a full day and then they gotta show up at a 4-hour meeting. I mean, it's a tough day. It's a long day for them. And then I think at the end of the day at the end of the night last night, he said, let's table this till tomorrow. We'll make good decisions. And Jacob's made that, when it gets late, we gotta get out of here. We're not making good decisions. Some of the things to discuss are how do we keep these meetings moving? Make sure everybody gets the fair hearing. But at the same time, we get to the other agenda items that we need to discuss. And if that means limiting testimony, that means limiting testimony. There are things we can discuss how to do that. Not still we want hard and fast rules, these things to discuss.
I mean, I'd love to see our meetings be more efficient. I think there's a lot of wasted time. There's a lot of repeat of discussion, argument, whatever you want to call it, that doesn't need to happen. I mean, there's going to be times when, we need to have a 4-6 hour meeting, but that should not be the norm.
So there were,
In my mind.
in my career, we had meetings. And oftentimes people would go off on tangents. We would assign somebody in the room, call them rat hole monitor, right?
On what?
Rat hole monitor.
Rat hole monitor, if we're down a rat
In other
hole.
words, somebody in the room who had the authority to say, call rat hole and basically shut you up. And it wasn't confrontational at all. It was, we're off topic.
We're out of the weeds.
We've got a limited amount of time to solve a problem here. Stay focused.
Under the Robert's Rules of Order that. I mean, I've spent some time going over them. A few hours. And then and I bought the books just because sometimes people say, okay, we're gonna limit. Like the council's limiting testimony right now. Testimony even on contested things like 3 minutes, 5 minutes. Not just public comment, but testimony.
We set some testimony limits about 3 meetings ago, I think, and we just haven't done a good job of it.
Yeah, I take responsibility for that.
20 minutes,
It's 5 minutes. I also don't think it helps when you're asking follow-up questions. Just let them go for 5 minutes and then that's it. They need to know that that's it. That was my fault for not setting the timer though.
I didn't know we adopted that rule.
Yes, it's in our handouts.
I don't know. Okay. Well,
Your idea, as a matter of
It was
fact.
my
It
idea.
was actually, it was your idea.
Just have,
Help me, folks. Understand that.
So when Jacob does staff reports and has all the items in red. Ask him to go through them with you after you've had all, and then he can run through them because he knows what they are. They're in order. As a chair, you're not expected to know the ins and outs of every aspect of the staff report, but he needs feedback on all those things. Go through them first. And then you can go into deliberations and actually say, okay, what do you think about this criteria? What do you think about this criteria? Just get through all the red stuff first.
That's where I felt like it got a little jumbled
Yeah.
last night, was that we
It's
didn't.
okay to say,
do that.
hey, staff, can you run through the items that you need feedback on and let him just run that portion? It'll go way more efficiently and effectively because he knows the ins and outs of that staff report. That's what I noticed last night, and I was frustrated that that didn't just happen. You know, that's what Chairman Carey did. He'd say, okay, remind me the things that we need to answer on. That's how things go fast.
Yeah, I think I could give, on the staff report and how we could arrange things is. I think it'd be good to start the staff report with what are the things we need to decide, like page 1, like variance criteria. And then, any other criteria that we need to do, right? So that we know, because I think the variance criteria was on 17 to 25, and then the other criteria was on, and you see, I got a page 1 here, so I said, okay, 1 variance, and then I think the other one back here. So I'm just thinking some just organization of the criteria. And then might help just kind of. And then we just drill down, because like you led with, and I don't want to be critical. I'm not trying to be critical, like page 2, we're talking about whether it's a shopping center or a shopping plaza. And to me, I'm like thinking,
That's the order of our code.
Yeah, it's in
Start-
chronicle order with the code, so it's systematic. So the report follows each chapter. That way, when we're reviewing,
Yeah, that's
we're going through the chapter. That's more or less how it followed. And yes, there's your core criteria. Like, let's say, conditional use permit. There's, a half dozen standards there. But some of them, reference all site development review criteria shall apply, and then that opens up. So it opens up a hell of a lot of the code. And that's why it's. And what I've done over the years, because the whole red, I can't remember when I started
I
that.
like the red.
But it was a way. There's a couple benefits, and it's all about, I'm always thinking, how can I be efficient? Because it's always, what's next, right? To try to get things done, but also to do them. So it's quality work, as quality as it was. So the red one, it cues the commission in, well, here's some things that aren't necessarily rubber stamp stuff, right? I'm not sure about this, there should be some input. And then it also, when I'm writing the final document, it's a quick way for me to go, yeah, this is the text I need to change because it's referencing something new and different. So it's just some of that efficiency. The one thing that I started doing, and I'm curious on with staff reports, is for administrative decisions, we put the conditions up front instead of in the back. I haven't done that with public hearing staff reports. I don't know if that would be of any value if the conditions were first instead of last.
Getting used to them in the back.
No, actually, I think first is good, and you're talking to somebody who's gone through legal, well, hang on 1 second, I've written a lot of legal briefs in my day. And, the idea is to present to the court a judge who knows nothing about your case, what your case is about, what the law is, and why the court should rule in your favor. And sometimes you get, I think usually briefs are limited to 15 double-spaced typed pages. And then if not, you have to seek leave of court to have a longer brief, of which a lot of times the court just says no. You get 15 double-spaced type pages. I don't care how wonderful your argument is, you're gonna have to fit it within that. And so the way the pleadings are arranged is your notice of motion, which is kind of like, this is what we want. And this is why, and these are the laws that we're gonna use. So the court says, okay, this is a motion for summary judgment for whatever, and here's the codes. Then there's the factual statement, and so that's how, and then you go into the points of authorities. And so it could be kind of the same structure in that this is a variance and conditional use permit application. Here's the variance laws, here's the conditional use permit laws. Here's the factors and the facts under the variance. Here's what the conditional use permit is, and try and structure it that way. And then try to get to how, this is something that I was told by a very good friend of mine. And he said, always try and make your best points first. And the reason is you say your best point, and if they're not interested in your point, once you make your first point, they may not listen to your second point. So put your best point first, then kind of go down the list. So I think having the staff's opinion of what the most pressing issues are up front, as staff sees, would help, because rather than the order of the code, then we understand that, okay, as far as granting this variance, this is what staff thinks the critical factors are. This is why staff thinks these things are met. Conditional use permit, this is, and then you kind of put the whatever you think is least important last. It'd still be in there, but so that's my suggestion on how I think would help preparing for the hearing, because I do read these, and I spent time with this, and I highlighted it, and I'm trying my best to read them, to become educated, and to be ready for the hearing.
Yeah, sometimes you don't know what issue is gonna go nuclear. And that's something, but if the conditions are first, because the conditions, that's the decision. And if I'm like, well, I'm not sure about this, I'll put a placeholder in there. That just helps make things efficient, and I think that may help trigger some of the important things. I don't know, I'll have to think about it the next time we.
Yeah, we'll have another one.
Even a way to think about it, and possibilities, is even doing like a very brief executive summary. At the very beginning, you can still have your report kind of laid out the way it is, because I think it does make sense to go by the code. But even doing something like this, and again, we do things, and we'll do an executive summary to begin with. That kind of just pops that stuff in there and then goes through the. That's just an idea.
Yeah.
We already have that. If you look at
I'm looking at here.
Use the applicant, the owner of the zoning, the location of the proposal, and then cite information back to it, I think. And then the legality of the public notice was sent.
What I think I hear you say, Charles, that would be, all right, here's land use. Okay, Charlie, yeah. So, overall, things look good. Here are some things I'm not sure about. Pay attention to that when you're reading the report,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
I mean, doesn't have to be anything formal, just or long or anything, but
Yeah.
just kind of to really pop those things out there to begin with. Pay attention to when you get to it for that part.
A little hit list.
yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
So just as an example, yesterday's hearing, you'd start with the variances, correct?
That's where I did.
Well, no, but I mean, is that what you're asking of Jacob? So look, here's the proposal. This guy's gonna do this, and this, but he wants this, and this in kind of as his. For lack of a better word, I don't know.
He basically taking your red, where you got your red highlights. And then
Doing them all in a paragraph.
bring them on into a paragraph at the beginning. You still have them where they are, but doing, again, it's just an idea.
Yeah, now I try to keep the staff reports as short as possible.
Sure.
I've looked at other jurisdictions and they're
Because
insane.
The record,
They're insane.
so.
So we could try that. We are coming off several years of hell, where it's just trying to, for a long time, I felt like a staff report factory. But things are a little bit better now, so I think we could just do that to help you all understand, because it's a lot of stuff and, you know, it's tough for me and I live and breathe this stuff every day. I can only imagine how it is for you folks.
So as the chair. It's the job of the chair to hold the hearing. And to make sure that we make lawful decisions, and the thing that I sent out was the importance of making findings. And you know, as we improve in our communication, as we improve, I think, in our abilities, we're gonna start making findings. And start making our decisions and making sure that our decisions fit within the law. So right now, for me as the chair, very first course of action is, okay, what is it legally we need to do today? What laws do we need to go through for this hearing? What findings do we need to make? How do we come to a decision? Understanding that in the best way possible will help keep things moving. Because when we start getting off track, that's got nothing to do with what we're talking about here. That isn't before us. And so, you know, there were factors, 5 of them here, and that's why I kind of kept repeating them. But I think it's important that people understand, why are we having this meeting in the first place? Where is it that we need to go with this? And what findings do we need to make so that in the event somebody appeals to LUBA, you know, everybody, you know, Charlie talked about, what if we get appealed? What if we get challenged? And I put in something that I got from that seminar that we went to with Jenny, and that is the LUBA, the lawyer saying why they're so important, and why the record is important, and why the basis of the decisions is important, and how the decisions tie with the law. Because that's what LUBA is going to look for when a decision is appealed. If we just approve something and we don't have any reason for it, then our law, can't figure out what our decision is based on.
I think the fear is the denial, right? You need better findings if you're gonna deny it, because if you're approving something, it's not going to LUBA.
The opposition could appeal our decision to LUBA last night.
Yeah, I think
That's true.
And so making the findings,
Yeah, that's true. There was opposition.
yeah, and the opposition could also appeal to the city council, right? I mean, we granted the application, but the opposition could appeal.
Things have gone both ways historically.
Yeah. And so the council then knows, okay, this came before the planning commission. Why did the planning commission do what it did? Is it a trial de novo? Or certainly it helps the council understand, okay, this is where they ended up. Do we agree with that or not?
Now, we do, you know, we're listening to the conversation and we're picking stuff out, we're gleaning that conversation to help with the findings. So the planning commission doesn't always say, our finding is this and that, you know.
They never used to say that.
Yeah.
And then that's okay, because we're posting findings based on the discussion. So if you had denied the variance, Jacob would have made findings that you didn't feel like it fit with the character of the neighborhood, that the setback was too great compared to the surrounding, you know, other setbacks of the zone, you know, like he would have developed those. And I think that's something I've witnessed through the years. You seem fixated that the commission needs to talk about the findings, but reality is Jacob can create findings based on your discussion.
He knows the wordies.
Now, it doesn't hurt to do that, but
Well,
just
you come back and
to
ask
know
those
that
questions.
that's in that hearing, it's a constant thought about, okay, where are these people going? How's that gonna relate to the paper?
Yeah.
Now, obviously, if you state concise findings, that makes it easier.
But I've seen you come back and ask questions before. When it wasn't clear, and when things were gray and something's not actually in the code, you're like, wait a minute,
Right.
I know how you feel, but it doesn't match what you're trying to match it up to, and previous planning commissions have retooled it to make it match.
So so just 2 things on that. Number 1, I'm somewhat in tune with what a reviewing body may do just because of my training, and when I get, we did that thing, the lawyer gave it, right? And so I can see how our decisions are gonna be reviewed. And so, yeah, I am a little more focused on findings because I think that's what we need to do, and I agree that teasing the findings out during the deliberations and seeing how the planning commission goes, it's not always important for us to state our findings, but sometimes it's very important for us to state our findings, especially on contended issues. And I think as we move on and move forward, we're gonna get a better feel for when we're gonna be doing that.
That'd be great.
And so, that's kind of, I think that we're gonna get a better feel for that. And then the second thing is that this planning commission's heading in a different direction than it has been. It's gonna be we're gonna be doing things, we're a proactive commission, and we're gonna be diving into things and taking on some things and trying to help legislate. And so as we go down that road, things, how we communicate, how we do this, if we succeed in doing it. If we succeed. Because that's where we're trying to head now. Right, last year we decided we're gonna be a proactive planning commission, then we developed procedures, then we took on HB 315. And then we've been sort of chewing on that, but it takes a lot of time. It's a lot of time to do these proactive things. It really does. So.
Don't underestimate the heavy lifting.
No, it does. I've spent tons of hours on this and I'm willing to spend more because I think it's super important. But if somebody said, oh yeah, Steve, get involved in something else, I said, not until this is done. This is about to be done, but until this is done, I'm not biting off anything more because I'm already spending a ton of time on it. So, okay, so what else? Does anybody do we want to touch on some of these other things? I think we should do a little bit of heavy lifting on this. I know we were going to bring up HB 315, but does anybody want to talk about our communication more? So shorten the share, shorten the 5 minutes, waste of time. 3, I'm going to try and tighten things up. Just try and keep things moving along more.
It's like last night, I know you wanted to hear what the testimony was, but it affected the end of the meeting, so we didn't have time to discuss 3115 because he ranted for 20 minutes.
Just make me cry right now. Just make me cry. I'm just gonna burst into tears. No, I hear you. I do.
It's such a fine line, you want.
No, you know what? I think, you know what? I got big shoulders. You guys keep it on and tell me where I can do better, and I will, the idea is to be better and to get better.
The one thing that bothers me about the 3115, that I wish that we could take the personal out of it and make it just really factual. And I think I heard Jacob trying to do that at one of the meetings where I need to know what's important. Tell me this. Tell me this. It was just very specific questions. I felt like the group was so busy ruminating on not wanting tents in front of their house that we lost track of the question. Does that make sense, or was I the only one? Because you kept asking, because Jacob and I have shared experiences, so that's just a deal from your
8 years of sitting here.
right. But I mean, we went through this process with pot shops about what's important to you. So I understood the process about it being for pot, it was schools and it was different things, and you mark those on the map, and then we created rules that made that work. Because we didn't want there to be more than 3 shops, and we created rules, there was only 3 shops. Based on the rules we created, we didn't say you could only have 3 shops. We just created rules that ideally there could be 1 here, there could be 1 here, based on the bubbles of red zone we put on the map. So that's what he was asking for, is where do we put the red bubbles? And what I kept hearing is like, nobody wanted anybody camping. And this 3115 is about, we have to let someone camp, so it's like.
We have time, place, and manner. So
Right.
place is where.
But nobody
Time
was
is how, and
willing to give up any place, so we were just stuck in this
Well, okay, and
crazy
so,
mode.
that's kind of what we need to talk about here is we can drill down to places. We can't start talking about it. You gotta go, Charlie. Are you okay, or?
My deck is sore, that's it.
Yeah, I just, it's not specific, like at the corner of 6th and Wyatt, it's specific as to, you know, in the case of other things. You know, I mentioned the non-smoking thing, it's 10 feet from a door. I didn't mean that I want somebody tenting in front of 10 feet from a door. It just meant that's how these things get narrowed down, is you decide where it absolutely can't happen. And so if we decide it can't happen on a school ground, it can't happen in a park, then it's distance from those things. So it's like those kind of criteria is how you get to guidelines.
Okay, and so this challenge is not like any other challenge that any government has ever seen. Just so that we understand, just the animal that 3115 allows the city to be sued for a difference of opinion. So it's not like somebody rolled a regulation down and said, look, you gotta put the homeless camps here, you gotta do something, no smoking within 10 feet, implement the law. This law is about somebody saying, no matter what you do, I can sue you if I don't like it. And if I can get somebody to say, agree with me that it's unreasonable, I get attorney's fees. These sorts of laws, in my experience, are abused, completely abused, because what happens is that you could think of 1,000 different ways that that something is unreasonable and bring a lawsuit. And you could sign up 10 clients, pay them $50 a piece, and file lawsuits, and have the city suddenly having the burden of 10, 20, 30, 40 lawsuits they're carrying, litigating, that are eventually gonna have to go to trial. That's the reality of this law. And so I don't think I think it's one thing to say, let's all sit around in a room and take our personal opinions about things and then try to make a decision. I have a personal opinion, you have a personal opinion, Mark has a personal opinion, everybody here has a personal opinion. Our decision-making, to the extent possible, should be made on the basis of evidence and data. Then we're gonna be able to defend it. We all sit here today and decide, where do you want where do you want the tents to be? Where do you not want the tents to be? I have my opinions, you have yours. We can all sit around and talk about what our opinions are. And the same thing with the council. I think the danger is, Mark says, hey, look, I'm new to the council, I've been doing this and I'm a hard worker. I like the community. I wouldn't want them in the sports parks because that's where, my kids play sports. And Mark may have an opinion. So the question may be, okay, so Mark says it's okay here, but not there. Well, is it okay there? What's your basis of saying it's okay there? And so that's where I'm trying to head this discussion and make sure that when we make a decision about this, we have good reasons for it. It's just not somebody's opinion. It has to do with, number one, protecting our citizens and protecting our businesses, which is what our commission is about. Our commission is about protecting our citizens and protecting our businesses. It's for the beautification, economic, health, safety, welfare, including our homeless citizens, by the way. We do have homeless citizens. They're included in that group. And we got people that are really poor on the verge of homelessness. And they're included in this decision-making process too. The CAT guys, they said, I read the CAT thing and what kind of resonated with me when you said earlier about, I know people that are homeless. What the CAT says, when people say, we don't like to talk about homelessness houses, because a lot of people think of drug addicts and crazy people. That's not who everybody is. And so we're trying to devise a solution that will help us, and this is what the subcommittee's working for, this is what I'm working for, will help us have the maximum amount of engagement, give the people the maximum amount of support they need based upon their individual circumstances. And then we can and then protecting ourselves. I think one of the biggest fears is that if we have a camp, we're gonna get 1,000 people here. People are just gonna come here. And so one of the things is we should be capping our numbers, which is why we should be finding out what our numbers are. And what are our numbers? And, so far, subcommittees figured out, somewhere between 10 and 30. Homeless in St. Helens. So we don't need a lot of space.
That's a low number.
That is a low number. Well, you know what?
Yeah, I don't know.
I've heard that time and time again from reasonable respectable sources, and I believe those numbers.
I
You believe those
I
numbers?
believe that.
I do. I can tell you why I believe them. I've been,
There's 17, I think, this year, unhoused teenagers alone. So where
Where?
are those? Here in St. Helens that are
Where?
attending school and
People that are sleeping in a tent, sleeping in a car somewhere.
couch surfing and
okay, the car's different than a tent.
They still don't have an address.
Well, we have to talk difference between unsheltered. Couch surfing is sheltered. That is shelter. That means you're with a friend or family or whatever. Your individual circumstances are such that you still haven't burned all your bridges. There's a lot of folks in couch surf and staying at home and they've got friends. And then there are people who cannot be even with their family because they will slam the door in their face.
what's the organization that Kiwanis works with and works with the houseless teens that are.
I can't remember. I know the group, but I can't remember their name. There's a lot of hidden, there's a lot of hidden people that are unhoused. And
Okay,
they're not
so,
included in the 30 people that you actually see when you drive. There's a lot of people in the that are in a tent in somebody's backyard. They're someplace that you don't see them
okay, so
because they don't want to be seen.
you know what, and I say we respect that wish. There's a lot of people, the feedback we're getting, what Jacob's getting, and what I'm getting as we explore this with the people who work with the unsheltered people. A lot of them don't want to be seen at all. They don't want to be around anybody. They don't want anything to do with other people. They are where they are because that's where they want to be. And so the question is that on our land? And if so, maybe, and if we don't care that they're there, maybe we should, that's just the land that we should say you can't sleep on. That way they're not breaking the law anymore. And for how long can you sleep on there? I mean, those are the questions to have. And then the question is, what do we do with people who are out of town? Somebody's just coming into town. Whatever reason, they're not from here. And they don't have any money and they don't have any place to sleep. How long can they stay till they have to move on?
The only reason I'm mentioning the numbers and I feel like they're low is because I think it falls into the argument that our mayor said, and is that it's not a problem here, so we don't have to worry about it. And I think they're burying their heads in the sand. So that's the only reason I'm mentioning the numbers are, I think, seem low because it is here, it is gonna happen here, and they better get their heads out of the sand.
And as the town grows, the risk becomes even larger. I think
Yeah.
that's being ignored from the city council.
But I think what we have to understand too, though, is that what we're addressing with the House Bill 3115. It's not trying to deal with the homeless situation overall. What my biggest thing is, as of right now, the ordinance that is in St. Helens as of July 1st is going to be unlawful on its face. So whatever we do, we have to get that because, again, going back to Steve's point, somebody could challenge it, just based on the face of the law, not because of anything happening. I know Doug Morton at the one meeting said, well, it doesn't matter, our police aren't enforcing that, so they're not making the people. That doesn't matter if the ordinance itself on its face is unlawful. So we've got to do something. I think we can, in some ways, we're making it more complicated than it should be in terms of trying to solve all the problems that we're trying to solve.
I think they do enforce.
Huh?
I think they do enforce. In
No.
fact, I've called St. Helens Police for a motorhome that parked in front of our place. That was looking to set up camp there and they were gone in an hour. They responded, they were gone.
That was on private property
It
too.
was on the street, up the street.
Well, and there's differences with when you start talking about the vehicles and everything a little bit too on it.
Yeah, I mean, it was a safety hazard, so.
I don't think we can assume. So I think we need to devise a solution that there is a plan for the police to implement. So the police aren't, so here's the simple thing. They either have a place to go or it's every place. That's really kind of the bottom line. And so the question is, where will those places be? And there's reticence on the part of the city to identify a place because the city's concerned about tort liability. City's concerned that if we designate a spot, then we could get sued if something happens there. And my response, and you heard my response at the meeting with the joint meeting with the council is, if it's a choice between the city having liability and somebody having a tent in their yard or down the street, I'm going with the city because city liability, they can buy insurance and we can do the best we can under those circumstances. We need to protect our people and our community. And that includes the homeless people, by the way. And so we need to have a reach out to those folks so that you'll find a number, 10, 17, 30, 50, 60, whatever that number is. And then we say, okay, who are these folks? And what do they really need? We got the folks that are coming in from town, out of town. We don't want to invite people from out of town here. That's the last thing anybody wants. We're not here to provide services for America. We're here to provide shelter, place where people can shelter for our people. And so why not pick one place by the industrial land? And have that place be a place where they say, look, you need a couple places, just a couple days, 3 days, however long we agree is reasonable. That's where you go. You don't sleep in McCormick Park. You don't sleep on Mark's Street. You don't sleep on anybody's street. You want our charity. You can rest your head there knowing full well that nobody's gonna come around the middle of the night and say you need to leave. You can set yourself up and have a good night's rest. And so that's kind of where, and then there are other folks that I don't know what the needs are. So that's what we're trying to figure out, honestly. Tell you the truth. What are the needs? Who are these people? How do we interact? And one of the things, Mark, that I'm exploring, and I don't know if you got the email, is maybe we could do is lease land to like CAT or CCMH, where they can administer some of these areas. And that way, it's not the city administering something.
You just pass the liability on.
Well, they started signing, well, first of all, these are people that are in the business of trying to help people. These are people who dedicated their lives to their jobs, their careers, like you, my friend, to helping people who have whatever it is that brings them to where they are. They're trained, they interact with the people and they know them. And I think they have a good idea of what it is. Some people, they're going to tell you, and I'm sure you're going to say, there's nothing you can do for some of these folks. They absolutely don't want your help. They don't want anything to do with you. And so, but then there are others that are going to say, here's some people that I think if we provide a bridge between their circumstance, we can help them.
And that is being done currently.
It is. Okay, good. Then we just meld that into the law. And we mesh that into our fabric and we make that part of our overall humane treatment of folks. And then we have, so the reason why if we lease city property to CAT or CCMH or somebody, however big it needs to be, for however many people and we're going to get their recommendations. These folks know too that, they know where they live and meaning CCMH does, that it satisfies the law that is still counted as public property for the purposes of the statute. The problem with the cases like Grants Pass is that the court invalidated a lot of their shelters. So Grants Pass came and said, look, all these folks that are unsheltered, there actually are shelters for them. And the court just like shot them full of holes. They said, well, this one here, the person has to go to church on Sunday. So we're not going to count that. This one here, the person can't be on drugs. We're not going to count that. This one here is blah, blah, blah. And so the court like meticulously just shot down all of the available shelter space. And so the statute ties credit to places for people to sleep on public property. Public property being defined, and I think Jacob probably knows the code right off the top of his head, ORS, whatever, which includes leased property. So even though CAT is administering this and they're the pros, why does the city want to administer it? Even though they're the pros, they give us defense, indemnity, liability insurance. They manage the thing. We say, hey, look, you can have 20 people here. Do a good job, please. And then that satisfies. So when the police pick somebody up that when the police are gonna know, number one, they may probably know who they are. But
They do.
if they don't, they're gonna say, okay, they're gonna make an assessment and then they're gonna professionally put them in a place where they can be. And I think we've complied with the law 100%. I think no matter what, if they sue us, we're gonna win. How do we lose if we've come up with a program like that? And we have all of our
Because it's subjective.
yeah, but we have CAT and all those people come up there and help us and say this is reasonable.
You should know there's one defense attorney that's got. And I know of a few in town that will take up these cases. If it suits their agenda, they will. Let me play devil's advocate for.
Anyway,
I hang on. Doesn't mean we're not gonna get sued.
and we are
It
gonna
means
get
we're going to. It means that we have a solid defense.
No,
right.
but let me play devil's advocate. We were talking about the Sixth and Columbia property, right? And you guys were against that because it didn't meet how you felt it didn't fit into the neighborhood. So in a sense, I feel like you're talking on both sides of your mouth, because now you're saying we want a homeless camp or a place for homeless people to camp. But at the same time, somebody who's putting up funds to develop something, you're kind of shutting them down. And I kind of feel like that's not equitable. If that makes any sense. Does that-
Let me address that.
Huh?
You can shut it down.
No, I know, but I mean, you were the variances and there were some issues with that. I'm just kind of, it's a very loose example.
What do you feel is
Well, no, I'm just saying is that where do you want these folks to be?
I think that here's, now that's a good
Because
one.
there's gonna be somebody's backyard there, Steve. That isn't gonna want that.
Well, here's, I hate to tell you this.
The
but
fair building would be nice. Backyard.
So here.
Have been
here are my
supervision.
thoughts on that. First, we need to go by the data. And that's what I've been saying. You know, right now, I've looked some stuff up and yeah, I kind of wanted to study this and I've been saying, let's get somebody to study it, but right now. I don't see any persuasive data that having unsheltered people living where sheltered people are is a good model. It's bad for everybody. It's bad for the unsheltered and it's bad for the people. There's a lot of reasons for that. So.
But I've said this,
Yeah.
forgive me for interrupting, but you're looking at reasonable accommodations, and if you put them out in the industrial area. There's gonna be, some of those folks are gonna be screaming that that's not reasonable accommodation because they don't have a car. They don't, you know what I mean? The services are closer into town, so now they have to walk. And we've discussed this before, right? So
Right.
at that point, it's like, how convenient are we gonna make it for folks? Does that
Well,
make
okay, so
sense?
I do, and I understand that, and I love the devil's advocacy. And so here's the point. We go to court and we say, hey, look, these folks, whoever this is, they're in their circumstances for a reason, okay? And maybe they're crazy, maybe they're drug addicted, maybe they're whatever. We are providing them with first of all, the law only says a place to sleep and keep warm and dry. That is it. Doesn't say it's convenient. It doesn't say that it's nice. It doesn't say there's a meal. It doesn't say there's a shower.
Does it say the city has to provide you with the location?
It just says the city has to be able to do it on, there has to be a place on public property for somebody to sleep and keep warm and dry. That is it.
Yeah,
So
it's reasonably objectionable
Objective.
from the perspective of the homeless person, which the convenience component could apply.
Well, I think we live or die on that hill. Because the fact of the matter is that it's not reasonable for somebody who is looking for charity to also want luxury. I am sorry. People who need charity, because we're talking about people who need it or are looking for it, meaning their circumstances are such where, they need help. And the society that is helping them wants to, we have rights too. So is it reasonable then to demand that they get something that somebody else is working their sweat or their blood for? You tell me that. The person that is, and this is the point that I made in the meeting, and that's the person who gets up in the morning. We're all here working, it's freaking 7:41 at night. Some of us are volunteers and some of us are being paid, or sorry, 6:41.
Wow, hear me there for a second.
6:41 at night. So those people make choices every day to go to work and to pay their rent, pay their mortgage, to do what they do, to be in the spot they are. And just to say that somebody else can just come in and plop their tent down and live there is, number one, not for the health and safety of those people. I mean, that is not reasonable. It makes everybody feel threatened. It makes people feel, and I can tell you that all you have to do is look at the videos of people who have people camping in their neighborhoods and see what they have to say about it. I played that video for us when we started down this road, and this was before your time on the planning commission, but people are terrified. People say they can't go out of their house. People say they want to move. Their property values go down. If you say that somebody can have a camp, if you say that the city passes a law and says somebody can camp on a person's street, their property values do go down.
I can tell you that Portland's houseless problem has been good for St. Helens and Columbia County's real estate market, because we're selling a lot of houses to people. They're tired of people defecating in their driveway. They're tired of finding needles in their yard, and so they're moving and they're leaving. I mean, I think I heard that for the first time in 40 years that people were leaving Multnomah County. And
So
it happened.
I guess my take on this whole thing was, okay, so we need to allow up somebody those reasonable accommodations, right, to sleep, stay warm, stay dry. We really have to tell them where these spots are.
yes,
We do, because if we don't have a specified location, then any ordinances for other public areas cannot be enforced.
But I'm not saying that we don't have a specific location. I'm just saying, why do we have to tell them where it is?
okay, I'll give you the flip side. I'll give you the argument on that one. And then, this is good that we're having this discussion. Because I'll be the plaintiff's attorney, because you said it's a plaintiff's attorney who's gonna sue. So the police will know where these places are, right? Because the police are gonna be telling the people where it is in the city they can camp. And so if we're gonna come under attack, which means there's a lawsuit being filed. The thing is that if we kind of make it this area that's sort of this mystery area, like find the Easter egg, like look through the statute and try and figure out where it is, because we're going to tell you everywhere it's not. I think that a good plaintiff's lawyer is going to exploit that for their advantage. They're going to say the city really is not reasonable toward the people. They hide the place. They're going to put you on the witness stand, or Jacob on the witness stand, or somebody on the witness stand. Say, hey, can you tell me where this place is? And do you know where it is? No, can you read the statutes? Where is it? Nobody can figure it out. And so then they turn that argument and say, this isn't reasonable. They're just trying to hide it. And why are they trying to hide it? Because they're afraid they're going to get sued. They don't really want to take responsibility. I mean, I think we just got to, that's the argument. And so the flip side of that is, let's just take the bull by the horns here and be the lions that we are, make our laws good, defend ourselves, buy insurance, protect ourselves. If we want to designate a spot, have some of these agencies come in and administer them for us. And then that helps us with our liability problem. I'm about winning this case, Mark.
I know that from the
all the way. Well, I know, but not a lot of people. I've been through a lot of trials and I've seen a lot of juries come back. And there just is this I just really, it's about winning, making a law that's gonna be fair, so the jury goes, absolutely right. And there will be the arguments that it's inconvenient, and we can defend that.
Why can we defend one but not the other? That's right, there's flaws in both methods. I don't see what makes one better. I know you're arguing that one is better, but other folks disagree with you. They think the other, like,
Well, wait, go ahead, which one are you talking about?
this whole, place on the industrial park as your example versus this hidden place in our ordinances that only the police know about. Those two arguments.
The reason is,
Problems with both. I don't,
I'm sorry, but I'm not even saying that it has to be a place. There could be locations around town where people could camp, right? It doesn't have to be one place. The last thing I think anybody's gonna wanna see is, frankly, a bunch of homeless people in one area, because they're gonna start fighting, there's gonna be crime, there's gonna be drugs, there's gonna be all sorts of
It's gonna
problems.
create a network.
And that's what it is, and I'll tell you right now, that community action team is not gonna wanna take that on as liability, at least that's my opinion.
well, I like the idea of more than one spot. I don't like the idea of these big camps. I do think our numbers are limited. That's why I think we should be devising a plan that actually deals with the reality that we have. That we can have our local people get more slack. You get a week or two, but if you're coming in from out of town, you got a day or two, then you gotta go. Do not want you, I'm sorry.
But what
I
defines,
don't want them here, I'm sorry.
what defines local from out of town? So some of the stories I've heard, someone's, lives in Bend for a while, but they went to high school here and then, they're there 10 years, it doesn't work out. Well, I'm down on my luck, I'm gonna go back to St. Helens. Are they from here or are they from outside? And how do you differentiate?
We make laws, we differentiate them, and then we can have those challenged, but the thing is, we aren't subjected to an injunction. I guess where I don't want it to go, I'll tell you my biggest concern, let's talk about what Jenny said, and that is. Let's just say we go with this area, a few areas that the police know about that. We're not gonna identify, because the overriding concern is we want places. But we don't necessarily want to endorse them because that causes liability for us. I think wherever those places are, they have to be away from businesses and residences.
And those places, based on my observations and conversations and observations over the years, they're the various open spaces through town. When I've done site visits, I'm like, oh, wow, there's that place here. There's one I've seen one by the middle school, just throughout town. And it's the conversations with people I've had, if they're not using vehicles, the chronically homeless are taking up some of these various open spaces because they're secluded, they have some privacy. And in some places, they have access to water. If you have a water filter, you can drink it. So that's where I believe, because that's where people, they feel safer. People typically want to have tranquility where they live, and those various open spaces give them that.
I'm with you. If it's reasonable, it's not too, I think we're gonna have to find some places, whether we do it by exclusion or inclusion. And so where are they gonna be? And the biggest concern I have is, let's just make sure the places that we say that where they're not gonna be, we can defend those areas, because that's the ones we're gonna get sued on. We're not gonna get sued on where they are. We're gonna get sued on where they're not.
And I've been thinking about, well, how do we show this? And what I would like to do is have various maps that kind of graphically shows the options to help us make the decision.
That'd be good.
That's my hope and that's my goal in the next couple weeks.
Well,
Excellent, thank you.
Because it's hard, without the visuals, it's hard.
I see vacant land and I don't know who owns it.
Yeah, so
And I see people camping on what is vacant land and I don't know if that's owned by the railroad, owned by us, or owned by somebody else.
yeah.
so there's ways, to me, it's gonna require both angles. Identifying not necessarily specific places, but the type of public places where somebody cannot camp, sleep, whatever. Because of safety reasons, whatever it might be. And I'm talking about real reasons of, being, if you're on a sidewalk and you're blocking ingress, egress, streets, whatever else like that. I think you can say that and down read the findings, why it's not allowed there. For safety reasons, not only for the unhoused person, but also for others in the community. And then have places designated that I don't agree with, or I don't. Not having them be hidden and not telling anybody where they are, that just simply won't work from a legal standpoint. That'll be knocked out right away. But I think you need to be able to have the police be able to say where there are some locations. I don't want to, spend time barking up a tree that's not going to work. The city council, I don't believe, is ever going to adopt anything where they're going to have a designated camp because of the liability. And even if you're able to lease it out, it's still the individual is going to be able to sue the city. Now the city may have, if they're able to get CAT or whoever to do it, can try to have some indemnification language in there. But the suit would actually still be brought against the city on that, if it's the city property on doing it. So you're going to be in it up until the time, or if you have indemnification language, they can take over the defense or whatever on doing it. But to me, it has to be a two-pronged thing where you're identifying, again, it doesn't have to be the specific address necessarily, but the types of places where they cannot camp and would not be allowed, and having findings on that. And then coming up with areas that possibly could be. And again, having the findings can be, some of the stuff that we, talked about the other day of being, so far away from any kind of residential or commercial property, and you can even fine tune that if you need be on it. But to me, it's going to have to be both. If you just do one or the other, I think it's going to get challenged and have
You
a pretty
definitely
successful.
need a net. The where.
Exactly.
Yeah, you had a pretty, if I remember correctly, last email you sent out, you had a pretty comprehensive list of where you weren't allowing, or where you didn't think people should be allowed.
Yeah, Jacob and I came up with collaboration, and that
I didn't
was followed from another.
I didn't disagree with that. So I thought those were all good, how do I put that? Good places not to camp.
Right.
What I'm trying to say.
That list excludes almost everything, though. It's kind of an impossible list.
No.
I think why we need to find where, that's why we need to find where, what is excluded. And that's why I think we do need to identify it, as much as we don't want to. Maybe what we do is we just get insurance, we get somebody to manage the identified spots, and then we sort of have these other secret spots that only the people in the know about. Because, honestly, we gotta respect the people that are unsheltered. They are human beings, they're smart. They survive, they are doing what they need to do their thing. And they go where they want to go. I think you've heard it, and even Mark said it, that some just want to be left alone. I just don't want to be bothered. And to those people, I say, I'm sorry. The man wants us to kind of figure something out, it's in a way, we're almost reaching out and tapping some of these people that we normally just live and let live about, because they're not bothering anybody. But we're being forced to sort of look into this thing. Literally.
Yeah.
So I almost want to apologize to those people, say sorry. I mean, honestly, tell you the truth, I had no idea you were there. And I had no interest in it. But now, the government has said, we're trying to figure out, whether we're being fair.
But I think a lot of those people, because they're out of the way places, I don't think it's going to change for them, because they're going to continue to be
Right.
out of the way.
I think there's plenty of the county land, and that's why, the judges didn't count county land they did not count it in the Grants Pass case. Now that's somebody trying to enforce the ticket, and then being challenged on the 8th Amendment. But the court said the county lands where people don't count because they're outside the city limit. That doesn't count toward the city getting credit. Which you know, the city tried to come forward and say, well, there's this whole fabric of places where people do sleep in this area. Including the county lands, and the court just said, no, I'm not gonna count that area. So we would need to, if we're gonna discuss, you know, intergovernmental type cooperation, we'd probably have to, that's the next step in this potential.
But the one thing here, and something that I always thought was strange and learned about it a little bit through being on commission, is there are ribbons of county like in the city limits, and that makes us different than a lot of cities that are. A lot of cities are real box, but we have little ribbons of county here, there, and everywhere, so it would still be within the city limits, even if it's on county land.
Well,
I mean, that's-
require cooperation with the county.
Right,
because,
right, so it's kind of like, we're not talking fairgrounds, we're talking a little ribbon of county property that's within the city limits.
Well, this draft actually has in it, one of the definitions is that other governments that own property within our city. They need to come to us in order, if they want to put, if they want to have an unsheltered area, it's like private property. They need to come to us. The county can't say, this is county land and therefore. So I'm kind of trying to. These are discussions that are going to occur, which is going to be an interesting part of this whole deal.
So the city council working on this as well, or are they just waiting?
I think they're waiting.
Yeah, I don't think the city council's done anything since the joint meeting.
Okay, I just wasn't sure if there was a thought process. Thought arc.
I'd like to come up with a time, place and manner. Make a decision on it. Let Steve work out the details with his group. And give it to him.
Yeah, I think,
Let's answer those and get them done.
yeah, time, place and matter, whether it's eight, you could be in some place from 8 PM to 8 AM, but then you gotta move along. You
Well,
know, whatever that ends up being, time, manner and place, and you can be in the same place for this many days and then you gotta move on.
What stops him from like,
Nothing.
I'm at this place, this block, and then you told me I can't stay there longer than whatever the time frame, and then he just moves to the next block,
Nothing.
next block, the next block.
Well, that's, so the city of Bend has you need to move 600 feet. You could put something like a quarter mile. There's ways to.
Post on the waterfront.
The way I've drafted this so far is. After you've expired your time, then you have to leave, depending if you're a temporary person, you have to leave the city limits within a certain period of time. And then after a while, you can't come back for like a year. And the reason for that is that. So I'm kind of going with the governor's plan. And the governor's plan is. Let's concentrate the resources where the folks already are, which is Salem, Eugene, and Portland. And that's where we've had the real mass problem, if you would. And so, you know, the mayor's wanted to have a plan where all this money got spread out. Of course, it's great to have money get scattered everywhere. We'd love to have money. Because this little solution we're gonna do is gonna probably cost more than we would have made on the mayor's plan. We'd have got 500 grand. That's like, if we set aside an acre, we just lost 500 grand. And so, but the governor is saying, well, all these millions need to go to Portland, Salem, and Eugene. So shelters can be built, so camps can be built.
She can get reelected.
Well, and
That might be part of it.
no, but I mean, the thought process is when you spread it out, it's like pixie dust. It has no effect.
Well, and plus, I think if we look at addiction and we look at mental illness. You know, which is a large chunk of the houseless, the unsheltered folks. It takes people with specialized training to help people with that. And it really scattering, like, and I agree with what Jenny says, is that is how, you know, St. Helens, we do a great job because we just got this huge, we just happen to have CAT, we happen to have CCMH here. So we have this mighty fabric, if we would, to help us.
There are supports here.
There are, but I'm thinking if you're talking about the numbers. It's gonna take facilities with people who are educated and trained. And that's gonna take money. And we're probably gonna end up heading things is toward involuntarily housing people. If you're involuntarily homeless, because you're such a drug addict or you're so mentally ill or both, we're gonna make you go for treatment.
Not gonna happen.
Well,
I mean, they can make, look, trust me, every day. I see this.
Free will.
Yeah, maybe,
Exactly.
okay, how about putting them in here, because it's kind of the same thing, right?
So I'm not gonna get into my work issues. There's a homeless problem for multiple reasons, right? We all know that, right? It's not just the affordable housing piece of it. I've watched people that have been successful with mental illness and addiction for brief periods of time, some for longer, and then they just blow up. Whatever reason, they quit taking their meds, they start using whatever. And so there's somebody now that's just gonna be homeless because despite the fact that they have people wrapping around them, trying to go to their apartment, they wouldn't get evicted, so they would have an eviction on them. There was all these entities that were helping this one person out. She was just too ill to realize it. I mean, and that's sad, but that's the bottom line is that the landlord needed her out. She was ruining the apartment. Everybody was coming around saying, hey, we gotta do something with her so she doesn't get the eviction, number one, so she can go back into or they can go back into another, place to rent. Working with the landlord, maybe they've got another spot that they can put her in. I mean, it's an incredibly large effort I'm not saying it's not worth it, but it's in the end, until she gets better, it's not gonna be worth it.
And if she needs shelter and she comes to St. Helens, there'll be a place for her and it'll be a place that is identified but it's not going to disturb the health and well-being of somebody that honestly, they're just having enough trouble just getting themselves in their job back and forth for a day.
So what I would like to see is you guys come up with the plan and then take it to the council. And what I would say, because I get where you're coming from, like, I don't think anybody wants to see a homeless camp. We don't.
Or even a tent.
Or even a tent, but you're right, we're looking at something, so we need to have some options. Whatever your option is, whatever my option is, I mean, we might not all agree, we might have to agree to disagree. But we're gonna have to, at one point, like, have some sort of plan within the next, what, 4 to 6 weeks,
By the end of April.
by the end of April.
If we want to do normal, if we want to do normal ordinance procedures, and that's not declaring an emergency for the ordinance, for it to be in effect for July, it's the end of April, so that's coming up
It
fast.
wouldn't be the
I
first
wouldn't-
we declared an emergency and made it in a shorter time frame.
I'm sorry, repeat that.
It wouldn't be the first time we've scooted the time together.
Yeah, I think
We
the
have that
governor's
before.
declared an emergency. I think we can declare an emergency.
And I think, I've been thinking in my mind how this is gonna play out, and one of the reasons yesterday I said. There may be a couple versions for the council, so they have some options, and it may help make. Them drawing conclusions more efficient, rather than, this is the only one, this is what you're stuck with, they gotta have options.
I like what Russ suggested, and that honestly, I feel like I've chewed on this long enough anyway. We're about, Jacob's done his homework. We're about to meet with Kat on Friday. I say, what I'd like to do is put together then the planning subcommittee on this can get together. We'll come to the planning commission with our final version at our April meeting. Planning commission will discuss it. Do we want to even have a public hearing? That's the question. Do we want a public hearing on this? Or we say, hey, look, come and testify if you want to. Why not put it on a public hearing notice?
Well, I think, so, one of the people I talked to said they want to kind of stay in tune with it. And, we can have our normal meeting and, just invite some of those people to help us.
Right. Have them come and listen to that.
Qualified, public hearing, but just a normal.
You put it on the agenda, people that are interested and you make them aware,
Yeah,
they
so
would come to give testimony.
our agenda next month is looking like 3 public hearings, but they should be short. They're annexations.
Their rubber stamp annexation is no
And
controversy.
there's 2 annexations right next to each other. They want to be in the city, they're building a house, that's it.
You
And
can
then
make the decision blind and half drunk.
Do we have to? We have to work on it anyway. So but
So the annexations and then Holcomb, the Klondike submitting an architectural review, they want to do their porch addition. So those are the things I know about. So that's it. HB 3115 can be,
So, yeah, we'll
The meeting.
have time for it, and I'm hoping that I'll have some feedback from Aaron Heisel
our attorney.
to include into the mix. We got stuff to him. I provided him draft number 2 from the subcommittee. Of course, you sent that to him recently. And
And I also sent him a whole bunch of questions too.
I'm hoping everything works out. It may be a mad dash, and if the mad dash like, oh bleep, oh bleep, oh bleep, we're not there, then I think we'll have to probably declare an emergency. You're not a council anymore, but. So used to that role.
We have history, I mean, not just from city council, but from me being on planning commission.
Yeah.
And it's just because proximity.
What we'll do is by Monday or Tuesday of certainly before, I don't know, when do you think if we're gonna get it on the agenda by the next meeting? Should I get the final draft to staff? The 11th.
That's the meeting. This is when the agenda is created.
Okay, so by next Tuesday. Because we'll have met with Kat and then I will get the final draft out. By Tuesday, that'll give staff at least a week if they can look at it and give feedback. If not, we'll do the best we can. Then we'll have our hearing. Because Friday's a Cat meeting, right? So then we will have our meeting on the 11th. It'll be a public meeting. We'll let people know that we're going to be discussing this, and then we're going to be moving forward. Our final version is going to be however far we get on the 11th. And we bring that to council, and then say the planning commission is going to bring this to council. We'll go to the subcommittee, council, present our thing, and then council can do what they want with it. And we'll be there for input. We'll be there for feedback, but we'll be done.
Just wondering, is kind of like Jacob does on the planning, how he does those little red zones, to Jacob's point of giving the council options to give this or that in spots in the time, manner, and place, so they have a range. So it's not like they're all pigeonholed, because if they feel like that, they might, when they have.
They may just get pissed off with, they have to have options.
Yeah,
And so,
Council doesn't get emotional.
no,
are you kidding me?
planning commission here. City council here, and then based on non-emergency, then the next week is when they would get a draft ordinance, which is pretty damn quick.
That's fast.
But so a lot of it depends on what happens with the planning commission and council here on whether or not we do a normal ordinance or emergency.
If we get it dialed in well enough on the 11th, it might not be that horrible.
Everybody look at this thing, and then, if you got feedback, it's good
Come with
to,
your time, manner, and place prepared.
What about 3 choices for each of them?
okay, yeah, you'll have it next Tuesday.
You're gonna say 93 times.
Well, you'll have it by next.
We just got their own version of it. It's like.
Going with Valley Way.
Belly.
Be our designated place.
We'll rendezvous at a place undetermined.
Way at Keel and the other one, we could do 3 different ones.
Good about that. Rob Salisbury, I don't think he would like that.
With like what?
Oh, if
Being
Billy
the-
Way is right next to their building.
Why would he not like that?
If that
That's where
made it hot.
If that's where we designate.
Spot when it.
Okay, no.
I have it on good authority that there are adult beverages close by.
Got it.
Okay, so we've agreed that we're gonna put this over to does anybody want to discuss this anymore before we leave this HB 3115 discussion?
And I need to leave.
Okay, okay, does anybody else want any more of this meeting, or should we end the meeting?
I just have something I want to say to Russ. No, just kidding. You talked about being concerned about the planning commission not being proactive. And I just want you to know, when things have come up like architectural standards, I did start looking into it. Go to conference, ask some planners, and then you just get buried. So it's not that we're ignoring it. No. And I want to make sure that that's not what you think.
Well, and when I was on city council planning, city council shut me down under Randy Mayor's mayorship and under Rick Scholl's mayorship, shut me down on our.
That's what I mentioned about the good old boy and this shift that's happening about.
I had been shut down under both mayors and they control the agenda and there was nothing I could do.
Yeah, well, I think that's gonna be changing, but,
I think Rick is for the planning commission being,
But I think we didn't have a united planning commission either, so it's like
I think that's all changed, but
it's
I,
a different deal.
you know, I realize the focus is going to 3115 now. And architectural needs some thought and that, so no, I'm,
You've lamented about not doing anything for the past several years, and I wanted to make sure you're not.
no, I guess I didn't see this.
From a,
I know you guys are you're doing your job and you're doing a great job, and what you bring to us is fantastic for making the decisions. It's just that I just felt that we weren't involved enough with.
yes, the inclusion, and I totally get that, yeah, I
and
totally
that's
get.
where I'm coming from. It's we get things thrown at us or put in front of us. And it says, well, here, this is, here's the decision, and what do you guys think? That's, oh, okay.
Well, and nice,
Way like the arch, up there. That didn't come to us. And I don't,
George,
oh, the gateway,
Oh,
That
as
was-
part of the corridor plan?
well, that's a long time ago. And so we did,
We're talking about the services that were just approved at council.
Yeah.
It's for design services. You guys will absolutely be involved.
Oh, I see what you're talking about.
Yeah, that was, yeah, there's.
We just approved that it's gonna be there.
We approved that the agreement with Lower Columbia to design it was done, but we haven't even kicked the project off yet.
Yeah,
you select a designer. I just, the
Council,
vetting of the designer, I thought would have been to the planning commission too. Did they come?
council approves contracts for
Is
services.
it just a verbal contract, so there's no design at all in it yet?
That's right. The design process hasn't started.
Okay.
And I want a planning commissioner or two to be a part of the design process. Architectural review, because it's in the riverfront district, will also be done.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, council approves contracts for. all city work.
The way I felt it was like more designed, it was selected then.
Oh, I see.
That's where I was. But anyway, that's just one little thing.
yeah. I think we're hyper aware of the desire for inclusion.
Good, yeah. Well, I think we'll be there. Everybody. Thank you.
anybody else want anything else from the meeting? Because that's, anybody, anything else?
Charlie,
And I moved
can
to
prove-
for the meeting.
I'm not just a crazy man, because we're playing at 13 nights this summer, so.
Favor?
Yeah,